Channel.
A very good morning to you at 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 11th of May. Today, are things looking up for Rishi Sunak? The economy grows at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
A former leader of the Labour Party claims voters aren't in love with Starmer, with opposition MPs fearing the country could see a shock results in the upcoming general election, a repeat of 1992.
And elsewhere, concerns emerge over Harry and Meghan's security in Nigeria. Meanwhile, reports suggest King Charles met with David Beckham whilst his younger son was in the UK.
This morning, dozens of motorists are braced for chaos on the roads with closures on the M25.
And the Eurovision final is upon us, with Sweden ramping up security amid increasing pro-Palestinian protests.
Good morning. It's all eyes on the bottom of the Premier League, with Nottingham Forest able to secure survival at 5:30 against Chelsea, whose manager, Mauricio Pochettino, hints that he, not the owner, might be the one to decide on his future at Stamford Bridge this summer. We'll look ahead to the lunchtime Old Firm clash, and in cricket, the end is nigh for Jimmy Anderson's Test career.
It's finally happening. A warm, sunny day across the UK today. But how warm will it get, and how long will it last? I'll have all the details in the weather coming up soon.
I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
So if you are just tuning in, a slightly different look for a Saturday morning.
Yes.
Don't worry, it is Saturday. I know, normally in on a Monday, but a few people off sick and various other staffing issues. We've stepped into the breach, haven't we, Martin?
Yeah, it's delightful to be back here with you, Isabel.
Yeah,
It really is.
likewise. Well, our top story this morning, we're leading with the economy. It's good news. It's grown at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
And that means that the UK is officially out of recession, with many hoping for tax cuts over the next few months.
And this comes after the former Labour leader, Lord Kinnock, has claimed that voters in Britain are not in love with Sir Keir Starmer, with some concerns emerging of a shock result in the upcoming election.
Yeah, if you recall, back in 1992, Neil Kinnock was thought to have lost an election that was deemed unlosable.
Well, joining us now is political commentator Peter Spencer. Good morning, Peter. Good to see you. Let's start with the good news, shall we? Lots of reasons for number 11 to be feeling pleased, I think, coming out of recession. A short, sharp recession was always, I suppose, part of Jeremy Hunt's plan, and beating America in the Eurozone. But are we still ahead of where they would be pre-pandemic?
That is a very good question. And, of course, Jeremy Hunt is picking out this "we've turned the corner, the plan is working, yay, we are winning." At the same time, his Labour shadow, Rachel Reeves, is saying, look, you know, we're still pretty much in the doldrums. We've had 14 years of stagnant living standards and crumbling public services. So, hey, what's new, guys? And actually, I'm rather interested in, there's a fairly senior city economist called Simon French who said, well, quite frankly, they're both talking through there, if you'll pardon the expression, naughty bits. It's worth remembering that during this shallow recession, that the Chancellor was saying, oh, well, look, there's really nothing to it. It's ever so shallow and it's ever so technical. It doesn't really mean a great deal. And then when we've come out of it saying, hey, everything's changed, magic, we cracked it. And so, I mean, there's a great deal of spin going on there. And of course, that is heavily echoed, I have to say, by Conservative supporting newspapers, because we are, let's face it, in a pre-election period.
It's interesting, Pete, because Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, interviewed Rishi Sunak yesterday, and he actually drilled into the data to show that if you compare year on year, not period on period, and if you add in inflation and population boost, we're actually 0.8% down per capita, per head. So they're spinning it as best they can, but the big question is, are people actually noticing any difference in their pounds and the pence and their wallets and their purses? I would suggest perhaps they're not.
But the expression lies, damn lies and statistics comes into mind here, does it not? No, I don't see how they can possibly be registering this at this stage. Maybe later in the year before the election, if we have substantial tax cuts, they might register that. But in the meantime, no, there's that sense of just that the country's gone to the dogs and we need a change, which of course brings us into Neil Kinnock's thing, which I suspect...
Well, let's talk about that, because a lot of people will remember Neil Kinnock's shock loss in 1992. He's done an interview, I think it was on Radio 4, where he's kind of said, look, all elections are unique. 97 and 92 aren't comparable with today. But there is a scenario, isn't there, where Starmer could have an upset, because as Kinnock is alluding to there, people don't seem to be enamoured with him.
Well, no, I mean, it has to be said, I mean, going back through the history of this, that Neil Kinnock, I mean, it seems only yesterday in 1992, and he went, yeah, at a party conference and then proceeded to fall in the sea, both literally and metaphorically, when John Major snuck in and got a surprise victory. And he's said this to me. He said, look, I've never forgiven myself for overplaying my hand at that stage, and it is a warning to Keir Starmer. But then, not that Keir Starmer needs that much of a warning, frankly, because he's very, very well aware of the danger of complacency in the run-up to an election. I mean, and when it comes to the country not being in love with Keir, I mean, the fact is, when Tony Blair came along, he was dripping with sex appeal, in political terms, of course, and whereas Keir Starmer simply does not have that same appeal. There's no getting around it. I mean, they sort of try to dress him up and say, oh, well, he's jolly solid and dependable. It reminds me of when they used to say about Gordon Brown, well, he's not Flash, he's just Gordon. I mean, the opinion polls, though, do clearly indicate that frankly, the Labour Party can't do worse than this lot. And so, although there has been one set of analysis on the basis of the local elections that suggested there might be a hung parliament, that is, local elections don't function in the same way as national elections, and all the other opinion polls point to a very clear Labour victory. Indeed, the latest YouGov poll gave them a 30-point lead, suggesting that the Tories will end up with fewer than 100 seats in Parliament, which is a pretty rubbish result by any standards.
OK, Peter Spence, with your analysis, always appreciated. Thanks very much indeed for joining us bright and early this Saturday morning.
It's a bit early to talk about Tony Blair's sex appeal, I thought.
Well, I actually recently read, I don't know why, don't ask me why, but I recently read Cherie Blair's autobiography. I've got a bit of a thing about reading the people who are sort of not in power, but next to them. Yeah, not necessarily always women, but quite often it is women. And she was just talking about how she just couldn't keep her hands off him. Oh. She literally couldn't. Well, I mean, they famously had a baby, didn't they, that was conceived in Balmoral when they were on one of his prime ministerial visits up there. So she clearly thought he had sex appeal. Yeah. In spades. Yeah. But, you know...
I hope you're enjoying your breakfast out there. It's this little glimpse into your mind there, Isabel. Your chosen
literature. You asked me to go there. No, I read a lot of political books, believe it or not. Yeah. I'm a bit of a loser like that. But, yeah, I find it interesting, little insight into what goes on in number 10.
I suppose he was quite... You know, he had a certain
He was young, relatively,
panache.
for those days. I don't think there were that many young politicians. It was before, obviously, Cameron as well. And Margaret Thatcher, let's be honest, unless you're a particular type of person, she wasn't exactly... sexy.
No. And we really shouldn't delve into John Major's sexual activity at this time of day. Yeah. You started this conversation. Where have we gone?
Sorry.
Let's move on, shall we?
OK. Edwina Curry might have something to say about it all. Let's talk about travel. That's much less controversial. And only travel if absolutely necessary. That's the warning if you're in the M25 area. Advice has been given to thousands of drivers following another unprecedented closure of one of the busiest, or is it the busiest motorways in the country, the M25.
It is ridiculous. Once again, the 5-mile stretch in Surrey between junctions 9 and 10 are now shut until 6 a.m. on Monday, causing delays and a 19-mile diversion.
Well, this is the first scheduled daytime shutdown of all lanes on the N25 since it opened back in 1986.
Well, joining us now is travel correspondent for The Independent, the legend Simon Calder. Simon, welcome to the show.
He's out on location as well already.
Dependable. You know this guy is always going to be in the right location. Simon, the nightmare returns. Part 2 is back. It's going to be chaotic for drivers. Tell us, how bad's it going to be?
Well, Martin and Isabel, first of all, thank you for those interesting insights just now. I think it is very good that we talk about traffic this time in the morning. So, OK, the M25, as you say, the world's busiest, not necessarily the world's busiest motorway, but it just sees an incredible amount of traffic, in particular about 10 miles from here. And the reason I've chosen this location, I'm in Tolworth, which is in the southwestern part of Greater London. That's because this is the key intersection of that diversion route. And as a truck obviously just roaring past, there's been quite a lot of actually Eastern European trucks going past, and that's typical because they don't necessarily know, because they haven't been paying attention, understandably, that there's been a massive close down of this crucial stretch of motorway. Last time, and we're going back to March, they managed to close a stretch of the motorway and it didn't have too much of an effect. And they say, well, that was because everyone paid attention. You might recall the guy in charge told everyone, decorate the bathroom that weekend, don't go out. And they seem to have paid attention to that. The big worry today and tomorrow, and this continues until 6 a.m. on Monday morning, is that people will just think, well, it was fine last time, so we won't change our plans. If that were to happen, it would be quite messy, not least because they're saying, go by other forms of transport. And you think, OK, well, I will go from London to Portsmouth by train then, which you can't do because there's engineering works.
Oh, don't tell me that. That's how I'm supposed to be getting home.
Crikey, there you go.
I couldn't work out my best route today because it was one, which way was worse, frankly, with the M25 closures and the train problems. Oh, well, that's something to look forward to. So what are they up to on the M25, Simon, and why are they deciding to do it in the daytime? Surely they could do this stuff under cover of darkness.
Yes, they're basically replacing a bridge or putting in a bridge at a gantry, and those could be done at night. And actually, we've had overnight closures fairly regularly in a number of parts of the M25 over the decades since it opened. The big problem is that you spend typically half the night moving the stuff in, and you've got half the night moving the stuff out. And as a result, that's going to Nuremberg, by the way, I think. As a result of that, the valuable time for actually doing anything is reduced. There's also concerns about worker safety. And so they've taken this unprecedented step, and there's going to be 3 more of these in the rest of the year. They just say it's much better. And if you warn everybody in advance, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Although, of course, we're here crucially at the halfway point between Heathrow and Gatwick Airport, the 2 busiest airports in the UK, and lots of people trying to get between the 2 of them.
Simon, one thing that leapt out at me is a bit of a nightmare. The 19-mile diversion goes past Chessington, World of Adventures. There'll be loads of parents in the backs of cars with their kids, been there, got the T-shirt, complete nightmare, gridlock, trying to get in and out of there. Is there any way around that, short of being airdropped in?
Look, it's a really good point. And actually, I know you will have your helicopter on standby when you're off the air. But the crucial thing is that a lot of people are going to be following their sat-nav for the diversion. And that's wrong, because if you've got a car which doesn't qualify for the emissions levels that are required by ULEZ, the ultra-low emissions zone, then you are going to be OK, because I'm well within the ULEZ here, you're going to be OK as long as you stick to the diversion route. But if you think, oh, Chessington World of Adventure, I'll just nip off down here, then suddenly you're liable for £12.50 if your car is not exempt the charge.
So you're charged for the privilege of sitting in gridlock. Wonderful. Something to look forward to this absolute heat wave of a weekend. Yeah. Simon Calder, thanks very much indeed for risking your life on a roundabout for us there. I hope you're OK and see you again soon.
Mowed down by a Polish truck.
Well, hope not. Right, it's 6:13. Let's take a look at some of the other stories that are coming into the newsroom this morning.
And the Northern Lights spectacularly lit up the skies across Britain last night as one of the strongest geomagnetic storms for years hit the planet. Usually they are seen in the far north of the country and are caused by charged particles hitting the different gases in the Earth's atmosphere.
Do send us in your pictures if you were lucky enough to see them. I'm always fascinated to see if anyone's been lucky enough. It's gbnews.com/yoursay. The US has suggested Israel may have broken international law using American-supplied weapons during the war in Gaza. The State Department said it was reasonable to assess that the nature of the conflict had created severe military challenges. However, the document also noted that Hamas uses civilian infrastructure for military purposes and civilians as human shields.
Now, if you're planning your summer holidays, then you might need to rethink your destinations because the authorities in the Balearic Islands are cracking down on excessive drinking in some tourist hotspots after locals complained of poor behaviour, including climbing into people's homes. The sale of alcohol will now be banned from 9:30 in the evening until 8 in the morning. It's the best bit.
I was going to say, you're going to have to cancel your Magaluf lads trip, aren't you, Martin?
It's all off. What will I do?
If you are planning on going to the lovely Balearic Islands, let us know if that will affect you. I mean, to be honest, I think that's a good thing. Why do you need to be buying alcohol on the streets after 9:30 at night, if indeed you're not just going to be causing trouble? You know, if buy it in the nightclub, fine. Buy it in the bar. But you don't have to be buying it in a supermarket or whatever, do you?
Perhaps a much younger Isabel may have thought differently.
Maybe, yeah,
Same
that's
as me.
true.
I mean, now I'm like, get to bed, you...
Get to bed. Yeah, I don't even want to be in the restaurant at 9:30 anymore. Although in Spain, maybe it's slightly different. Yeah. We're going to turn our attention now to the sentencing yesterday in relation to the death of PC Beshenivsky. The family and friends and colleagues of the murdered West Yorkshire officer Sharon Beshenivsky have been remembering the hero policewoman.
And as the ringleader of the gang responsible for her killing in Bradford in 2005 begins his life prison sentence, Sharon's friends say the dedicated officer and mother will never be forgotten.
Well, our Home and Security editor, Mark White's been to Bradford to look back at a crime which shocked the nation.
A grainy CCTV video is all that charts the final few moments of Sharon Beshenivsky's life, as she's seen crossing the road with colleague Teresa Milburn, responding to the activation of a raid alarm at a Bradford travel agent's. Just seconds later, the officers are gunned down, shot by armed robbers fleeing the scene. Almost 2 decades on, the moment justice finally caught up with the ringleader behind that robbery and murder, as Purandita Khan was taken into custody at a British police station after years on the run in Pakistan. Boarded up and derelict, the site of the robbery, Universal Express travel agents, has long since closed down. The only evidence of the horror here, a memorial stone to a fallen officer. Shot at point-blank range, Sharon Beshenivsky died here on the pavement. Teresa Milburn was rushed to hospital and survived. She would later testify that neither she nor PC Beshenivsky stood a chance, that the moment the gunmen saw them, they opened fire on the 2 unarmed officers. Purandita Khan, the last of 7 men convicted for their part in the deadly raid, was its mastermind. Captured on CCTV 5 days before the robbery in November 2005, Khan was driven up from his home in London in this Audi for a reconnaissance trip to scope out the travel agents. He was the only one of the gang who had previous dealings with the business. Khan fled to Pakistan 2 months after the robbery. When he was finally captured, extradited and charged back in West Yorkshire, he denied any involvement in the robbery and murder. The gang, he said, were only meant to intimidate the owner of the business, who he claimed owed him money.
On the 18th day of November 2005, murdered Police Constable Sharon Beshenivsky.
Have you any reply to that charge? Do you wish to say anything?
I'm not murdering anybody.
Sharon and Teresa went to work on that day back in November 2005, fully expected to come home to their families and friends. But due to the horrific actions of those individuals that have now been convicted for those offences, that wasn't the case.
In a safe house in Leeds, the robbers met the night before the raid. Later, police searches of the property found clothing and other items belonging to the men. A workman renovating the house overheard the gang's celebrations as Khan told them the business kept up to £100,000 in its safe. Armed with a machine pistol and other weapons, they set out the next day to rob the travel agents. Khan travelled in one of 3 vehicles, waiting outside as 3 of the gang carried out the robbery. The owner's son managed to press the raid alarm that brought Sharon Beshenivsky and Theresa Milburn to the scene. West Yorkshire Police Federation Chair Craig Nichols, like so many other serving officers, can remember exactly where he was when he heard the news of the shooting. Almost 2 decades on, the tragedy is still deeply felt.
The memory will never go away, and we will never allow that memory to go away. Sharon's dedication to her communities and to the communities that she served within not only Bradford but also West Yorkshire will never be forgotten. West Yorkshire Police will never allow that, and neither will the West Yorkshire Police Federation and her colleagues and her friends.
Now the final member of the gang who ended the life of a dedicated officer has been jailed. And at 75 years old, there is little doubt Piran Ditta Khan will die behind bars. Mark White, GB News, Bradford.
OK, time now to get a check on the forecast with Aidan McGivern. And I think basically, based on what we're wearing, you can discern it's going to be hot today.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or 2 across higher parts of central Scotland, but for the vast majority it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday, but it's going to be once again dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland, into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Beautiful. Now there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize so far, a whopping £20,000, and that's tax-free.
Yeah, imagine having that in your bank account this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. Here's how.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Stay with us. We're off to Nigeria in just a moment. Guess why? Because Harry and Meghan are there on their sort of, I suppose it's their version of a royal tour. All the details in just a moment.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
Welcome back. Now, it is day 2 of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's, I don't know what you call it, really. I mean, they're calling it a tour of Nigeria, whether you call it a publicity stunt or a sort of victory lap. I don't know what you want to call it. Many are calling it a sort of royal tour on their terms.
Quasi-tour.
Quasi. Yeah, whichever.
Not the real thing.
Yes.
Anyway, but commentators noted that Nigeria is actually the 12th most dangerous country in the world. And the military base Harry travelled to is somewhere the Foreign Office advises against all travel to, and this highlighting the hypocrisy over their security fears in Britain.
Yes, this comes as reports suggest the King was too busy to meet his son in the UK because he was actually having a private meeting with the famous footballer David Beckham.
That's got to help.
That's got to hurt.
That's
Although
got to
you can
help.
kind of understand, I mean, Becks.
Yeah. Golden balls over gingered. I'll leave it there. Right, joining us now is the royal biographer and former photographer Ian Lloyd. Ian, welcome to the show. Always a delight. So, they're on another global privacy tour, this time Nigeria. What's the point of it? They're not royals anymore. Is it just a showbiz ding-dong?
They're not royals, but the reason that Harry and Meghan are famous is because he's the son of King Charles III and Diana, Princess of Wales, who's still quite internationally famous, although she's been dead nearly 30 years now. But it's that royal brand that they need, and it's their sort of post-royal life has been waning. They've not really done very much in the last 3 or 4 years, apart from the book, obviously, and various documentaries. They need to boost the image, so they've come over here and almost use the British royal family to have this sort of show themselves as on the world stage, if you like. So, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I saw all the documentaries in Nigeria, the news bulletins. And I don't know what the people there thought, who they were, you know, whether they're just celebrities or whether they're royalties. It's very unclear, I think. But yeah, I mean, and ironic, as you say, because they want supposedly privacy and they've gone on this very high-profile tour, haven't they?
And Ian, a key point here is the security, or more to the point, the hypocrisy surrounding it. Don't forget, here's a fella that went to court saying that the British taxpayer should support him in all security matters while on British soil, and yet the Global Peace Index puts Nigeria at 144th least safe country on the planet. There are 72% more violent crime in Nigeria than in the UK. Not a peep about any of that.
Well, that's it. He's supposedly, or they've supposedly hired 4 security people, and the Nigerians have put an awful lot of money behind the tour to ensure their safety in a country where most people earn £1.50 a day to survive, you know. So there's, again, a bit of hypocrisy and irony in all of that. So it's you know, in a good way, I suppose. It shows what Harry could have offered to the British royal family by going over there as a working royal, but it highlights the fact that our royal family, the working royal family, can't get over there to Commonwealth countries at the moment. That's the other problem, the optics, if you like.
What about the language that we've been hearing from Meghan, saying thank you to the people of Nigeria for welcoming her home? Because, of course, she's discovered, hasn't she, through DNA analysis, that she's of Nigerian heritage. And yet, I'm reading this morning that she actually met Harry in the Windsor suite at Heathrow en route to Nigeria, but dislikes this country so much, where she got married and welcomed into the royal family. She didn't even want to step foot outside the airport. I mean, many people would say this should be her home. With Harry, I mean, it sticks in the core a bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's the fact that she knows she's not 100% popular here. I mean, when she was at St Paul's with Harry for I think it was the Platinum Jubilee, they got booed. Some says there was boos the other day. So she knows her image is not 100% popular. So she probably wouldn't want to do that. And as you say, there would be irony if they're supposedly feeling unsafe in this country. If they keep regularly popping back as a couple, it seems to undermine that argument, doesn't it?
Well, Ian Lloyd, thank you very much indeed. We'll watch it with fascination, don't we, as this tour continues. But royal photographer and former photographer, indeed, thank you for talking to us this morning.
43% Nigerian, she claims to be. Yeah, 43%. Yeah.
And now it's her home.
Yeah, and that's it. And she feels at home. And she had this thing about, she said to some kids, as I look around this room, I see myself in all of you. It's so saccharine.
Really? She grew up in LA.
Yeah.
And also, just the fact, it just really has fascinated me that she would not step foot outside of the Windsor suite, which is actually only supposed to be for the royals anyway, and they're not technically royals anymore. But does she really hate this country so much she couldn't spend a night or even half an hour inside our country? She had to wait in the airport for Harry.
I think you're right. What was so interesting as well, when Harry walked up the steps at St Paul's Cathedral in the week, he was cheered. The last time they were together, they were booed. Is she the boo factor?
Yeah, but she's just not reading the room, you know. Anyway, that's what we think about Harry and Meghan this morning. Let us know what you think. Get in touch via gbnews.com/your say.
Now, brace yourselves. It's time to go through all the latest sports news. Broadcaster Aidan McGee is here in the studio with us now. It's all tight at the bottom. Pardon my pun, in the Premier League. It's one of those mornings, isn't it? Obviously, my team, Nottingham Forest, no visit to Breakfastland will be complete without me talking about Nottingham Forest. But seriously, today is the day where the big drop is all the agenda.
Without doubt, it's all eyes on the bottom of the table. We should say Man City are in action as well at the top at 12:30. They can go top today if they beat Fulham at 12:30 over at Craven Cottage. However, at the bottom, Nottingham Forest in action against Chelsea at 5:30. Chelsea in decent form, just one defeat in the last 12 matches in the Premier League. An upward curve generally. We'll come on to those in a moment. But a win today for Nottingham Forest should all but guarantee survival, I would think. Luton have got a very tough game at West Ham at 3 o'clock. David Moyes' last game in charge at the London Stadium, of course. And I think, generally speaking, if you look at the bottom three, I think sooner or later you have to say to yourself, the three teams that came up last season, given the problems that Everton and Forest have had with points deductions, and yet still they look like they're going to survive. Everton relatively comfortably with 3 games to go. You'd have to say it wasn't a particularly great effort from the sides coming out. Having said that, it's not over yet. Luton have showed that they have the capacity to survive. For Forest, it's quite reflective. Yes, they're upset that they didn't get their points deduction appeal lodged, or they got it lodged, but they didn't get it realised, didn't get any points back. So Marinakis was disappointed. Spirito Santo was also disappointed. But Murillo, the centre-back, is confident that they're going to stay up this season. I think he's every reason to be confident, because I think although Chelsea can be a bit of a tricky proposition, only 2 defeats in their last home game, home 10 visits to Chelsea have made to the City Ground as well, so history's on their side.
Forest beat Chelsea this season, so the omens are good there. Yep. What this says to me, though, Aidan, is that look at the teams at the bottom. They've recently been promoted. Financially, it's so difficult to compete. That's why Everton and Forest spent the extra wonga, got slammed with the points deductions. Does this suggest to you there's no real way for the teams that come up to stay up?
Well, I wouldn't say that, no. I mean, I think this could be the first time since 1998 that all 3 promoted sides have gone straight back down. So generally speaking, at least 1 stays up. Most of the time it's 2. Sometimes it's even 3. So I don't think... I mean, I'm going back to 1998 here. I'm looking at it in a kind of historical context. However, it maybe just shows that I mean, I don't want to use the phrase, but cheating prospers, because it's worth throwing the money at trying to stay up, even if it means getting a points deduction, as long as you can guarantee that you're going to finish above 3 other teams. Now, I think it's perfectly possible next season you could see 3 teams coming up from the Championship who hold their own and will stay in the Premier League. I just think it's one of those years where it just hasn't worked out. Don't forget, Luton have got no history in the Premier League. They literally dropped out a couple of months before the Premier League was formed in 1992. So their starting point is far lower than, say, Burnley, who had, 7 years in the top flight before getting relegated back in 2022, and they came back. No one expects them to struggle in the way they have, but they haven't changed their principles. And so there are different reasons. Sheffield United sold their best players in the summer. So they're weaker coming into the Premier League than they were in the Championship last season. So it's not as easy to throw as throwing a broad brush blanket kind of analysis over it. Each team has different issues, different challenges. If Luton go down, they'll go down with, £150 million in their pocket. It means they can build a stadium that they've been talking about since the 1980s.
Now, a quick well done to Ipswich Town, the Tractor Boys. I know it was last week. I've got mates who are Tractor Boys fans. Are they going to find it tough coming up?
Well, of course they will, yeah, but they're in a similar position to Luton. They got relegated from the Premier League back in 2002. I used to cover them. It's a wonderful club. It really is. It's steeped in history. They used to vie with Nottingham Forest.
Final, they beat Arsenal.
They beat Arsenal in 1978, yeah, exactly. Roger Osborne scoring the winning goal, now sadly no longer with us. I mean, you look at Forest and Ipswich used to vie with each other for the title back in the early 80s alongside Aston Villa, and you're seeing a bit of a renaissance with these clubs. I hope Ipswich can do it, but you could see Norwich joining them as well. They're in action in the playoffs today against Leeds United.
Beautiful. Isabel, completely zoned out there when we were just talking about Forest. I don't blame you. So probably did the viewers. Apologies for that, but I enjoyed myself.
No, it's a big day for you. It's the first thing you mentioned when you walked in this morning.
It's the only thing you mentioned, is it?
Excited.
Only thing you mentioned.
Anyway, thanks very much, Aidan. We'll see you again very shortly. We'll be swapping him with Kevin Schofield and Emma Wolf this morning. They're taking us through what's making the news in just a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and reincarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christie's.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are three issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
It's 6:38. It's my favourite part of the programme. It's when we go through your Saturday morning newspapers. Let's start with the front pages, shall we?
We shall. And on the Times, it leads with private school enrolment numbers falling the most in over a decade due to fears of a VAT on fees if Labour win the election.
Here's the Mail. It's leading with the UK economy outpacing America, Germany and other Eurozone nations after growing by 0.6% in the first quarter of the year.
And the Telegraph leads with voters not in love with Keir Starmer. According to Lord Kinnock, party insiders fear that the general election could become a repeat of 1992.
Here's the I newspaper. It's leading with reports that the Treasury is working on cutting national insurance by 2p in September.
And meanwhile, the Mirror leads with the lawyer subjected to a 5-year ordeal by a stalker, portrayed as Martha in the Netflix TV drama Baby Reindeer, fears over what she may do next.
I haven't watched Baby Reindeer, but I've been hearing lots about it. I need to watch that.
I have watched it, and shall I say this?
Don't spoil it.
Probably not. No, the real-life person
don't libel anyone.
used to follow me on Twitter and retweet me all the time.
Ooh.
So I'm a little bit concerned. I could be next.
You could be next. Well, we're going to go through the papers this morning in the company of the political editor at the HuffPost, Kevin Scope. I don't know why I'm calling you Kev, sorry. And Emma Wolf, writer, columnist and journalist. Welcome to both of you. And thank you for joining. I'm not used to the Saturday show.
I know,
you
not used to seeing you here.
So giving a gate crashing the party. Emma, let's start with you. It's being sort of picked up, particularly in the right-wing press anyway this morning, as being a big boon, this growth in the economy, out of recession. And let's face it, that has to be good news. But I suppose as Martin was sort of digging into the figures a little bit earlier, are we really in that much of a cause for celebration when we compare how sluggish we've been compared to those other nations in the last few years, and actually per capita we're not really doing as well as we might.
And are real people feeling any better off? Most people are feeling poorer at the end of this government than they were at the beginning of it, and that's a pretty pathetic state of affairs. We've had a dire few years. You know, we put the economy into the deep freeze over the lockdowns, over COVID, all of that. So according to the Office for National Statistics, GDP jumped by a staggering 0.6% in the first quarter of this year. But as always, you know, digging into the numbers, what does this actually mean? The population is soaring. People, in terms of the public services that you can actually access, there's more and more pressures on that. Added to that, and more importantly, I think, is the fact that people have the bills landing on their doormats. They have food and fuel prices, which are non-negotiable. You know, you can be rich, you can be poor. You still need to buy your food, fuel, transport, whatever.
But all that
still need to pay your mortgage, your rent, all of that stuff, and that is still a huge pressure on people.
All of that could have still been the case, but we might not have had the growth. So there has to be some cause for celebration here, surely. And the Chancellor was always saying he wanted to have a bit of short, sharp recession in order to help curb inflation. So maybe it does help with some of the issues that Emma's outlining there.
Yeah, and obviously Rishi Sunak, after he became Prime Minister, that was one of his 5 pledges, was to grow the economy. So you can say, well, look, I'm making good on that promise. But yeah, I think the danger as well for the government is they can't be seen to being over celebratory about it, because you're right, people don't really feel it in their pockets, and if the government are jumping up and down saying isn't it great, the economy's going great guns, people are like, hang on a minute, you're a bit out of touch, aren't you, because I'm paying 20% more for my weekly shop, my mortgage is going up by a few £100 a month. You guys just don't get it, so they've got to be really careful.
And Labour have talked about this kind of gaslighting, almost gaslighting the public. Rachel Reeves has said that, you know, people are around £300 a year worse off. But I think people really do feel a bit kind of taken aback when they're told things are, I mean, going gangbusters, saying that the economy is going gangbusters. Well, just look around, and we're in London, but I mean, in parts, in the rest of the country, even in London, things just feel quite depressed. It's better with the sunshine, of course it is, but I don't know what gangbusters they're talking about.
Well, I mean, it comes down to what planet are they on, and Kevin, that leads us quite neatly, I think, to the next story, front page of The Guardian. The United Nations General Assembly backs Palestine to join them.
Yeah, so what basically this means is it doesn't straight away make Palestine a full member or give it voting rights, but it's a step closer. And it wasn't even close, you know, it was 143 to 9 in favour of this.
Abstentions,
25 abstentions, including the UK, which I think is significant. But yeah, you can absolutely understand why Israel have gone nuts about this decision. I also thought it was quite interesting. I had to read the story twice. There's no mention at all in the article about October the 7th or the fact that so many hostages are still being held in Israel. It doesn't kind of put into context exactly why the war in Gaza is taking place, and regardless of what you think of the Israeli government's approach to this conflict and the fact that they're going into Rafah against obviously a lot of international condemnation, including from the US president. But I think you have to put it into context. They've not just done it for no reason. You know, this started on October the 7th with a horrific terrorist attack, and many Israelis who were taken that day still remain hostage.
It begs the question, Emma, you know, Hamas is the political power in Palestine. There haven't been democratic elections in years. There are scant human rights for women, for people of gay... I mean, you wouldn't even want to be gay in Palestine. At what point is it a good idea to accelerate that kind of nations joining the United Nations?
And it feels dangerous, actually, to use these kind of terrible atrocities. And obviously, the sympathy that everybody feels for those suffering in Gaza now, of course they do. But to use that as a way of getting, you know, as a way of justifying Palestine's questionable entry into UN sort of full membership, Kevin's absolutely right. We mustn't ever forget. We can't let it just fade and fade because October the 7th is now 6 months behind us rather than 3 months, or, you know.
But I suppose if democratic elections was the reason or the justification for rejecting somebody from the United Nations, you wouldn't have Russia, you wouldn't have China. I mean, there's plenty of countries within the United Nations. And just to go back to your point, you know, at the risk of, you know, sounding like George Galloway, you know, if the stated aim is to annihilate Hamas and they won't stop until they do that, there is an argument that that will mean the entire destruction of Gaza and everybody in it. And is that at any point, you know, perhaps disproportionate to the terrible and horrific atrocity that happened on the 7th of October?
No, listen, there's absolutely no doubt that it's absolutely terrible that probably tens of thousands of innocent civilians, including many children, have died as a result of this conflict. Of course it is, and there has to be a resolution at some stage. But unfortunately, I think things like this just lead to even more outrage and anger, and it makes a resolution less likely.
It's not on our papers list to discuss this hour, but I just want to bring it in because it feels relevant, and obviously how this has leaked into the Eurovision this year. We will be talking about it later on in the programme. There's a big row brewing. You actually have a theory, don't you, that you think Israel, their contestant's going to possibly win?
Yes, I do.
Because there could be the sort of underdog theory and all of this. But there's a hugely politicised debate now about whether or not, if you're banning Russia from certain events because of their political stance, should Israel be able to have a female singer there talking about rain in October and other political issues? It's a big debate.
Well, it's a big debate, but I don't see the comparison, really. I mean, Russia invaded its neighbour, whereas Israel was responding to a terrorist attack. So I think that's where the comparison falls down. And I think it's terrible, really, that this Israeli singer is now facing such a horrific backlash. Or protests outside her hotel were enormous.
Well, she has to have 24-hour security now.
Yes, I mean, she was going around with a convoy of about 100 police cars. She's a 20-year-old girl. I mean, just think about the pressure on her. Of course, yes, she's a singer and she's in the public eye. But it's unbelievable how this... Well, 'twas ever thus. The Eurovision has never just been this sort of, you know, kitsch music event, but it's become so politicised. It's become a virtue signalling, gesture signalling, box-ticking thing, as well as everything else. All the international pressures. Tonight is going to be, and you know, the way it's been taken over by the kind of pro-Palestinian, the calls for boycotts and protests and everything.
But there's always been an element of politics in Eurovision, you know, dodgy bloc voting, let's support our East European neighbours.
That's probably why we do so badly.
Yeah.
We always seem to get beaten up every year.
And of course, I've mentioned Nottingham Forest.
Sam Ryder, hello, we so would have won if it hadn't been Ukraine.
I've mentioned Nottingham Forest. I'm now about to mention Brexit. Brexit became a factor, but this is This is a different level.
Yeah, this
because
is a different
what's
level.
happening here is that 10,000 people outside a hotel room, including Greta Thunberg, and a fascinating thing happened. She performed Eden Golan, an astonishing...
the Israeli
the Israeli candidate.
Candidate. I mean, it even sounds like a politician.
I'm using the language of that.
Yeah.
An astonishing performance against all the odds. That she was booed and harangued, but they edited that out. She made the final. What's happened now is that she's the bookies' second favourite to win, because I believe people are going to vote for somebody who they think is being bullied. There's going to be a backlash. I think Israel are a sneaky candidate to win. I've got 20 quid.
I know you've got 20 quid. I was thinking last night, I've never bet before, and I was thinking, how would I find a betting shop? How would I do this?
Ratings booster. I hate to be cynical, TV element, but everyone's going to watch now to see what on earth's going on. So maybe Eurovision encourages all of this controversy behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Who knows? Let's get back to our list then. Sorry, we went on a bit of a Eurovision tangent there.
Tonight,
Yeah, let's talk about cancer cases, Emma, half of which are linked to obesity. And this is on the front of the Telegraph this morning.
I've been saying for a very, very long time that the big health crisis of our times is not COVID, it's obesity. And just go to a hospital, just look around the population. Anyway, this is a big study, credible study from Lund University in Malmö, again Malmö, a study of over 4 million adults, followed them over 40 years, and has found great links. I mean, significant, I think about 40% link between excess weight and specific 32 different types of cancer. And, you know, we can keep ignoring this, we can keep pussyfooting around the fact that people are becoming obese and increasingly unhealthy, and increasingly then falling prey to the things which are linked to that, like diabetes, heart attack, stroke, heart disease, all of those things, plus cancer, of course.
And obviously that's awful for their own personal health, but it also has an impact on all of us as taxpayers.
Massive pressures on the
NHS. Which, you know, I feel like there should be a kind of moral conscience to try and get people to lose weight, even if they don't want to do it for themselves. They should do it for us.
Well, yeah, and yet, you know, successive governments, I've written so many stories about it, you know, cracking down on obesity, encouraging people to eat more healthily.
Sugar taxes, fat taxes,
everything like that, but
none of them have worked.
It never seems to work, you know, people
because we
enjoy
live,
those.
we live in a obesogenic society. We live in a society where we move far, far, far less because everybody's sitting on screens or ordering an Uber or just not moving. We don't need to move. We don't need to do physical housework or anything. And eating more. Calories are now cheap, cheerful, junk,
and we're depressed
empty
as
calories.
a nation, and people are eating their feelings.
Why do you think that we're depressed as a nation? I mean, it's just...
Well, this will
obesity
cheer
is the
people up,
thing.
Kevin. Anyone who's thinking about sending their child to a private school or has tragically got themselves into the handcuffs of already paying school fees is in for shock when Labour come along. And this is having an effect on enrolment numbers, according to the front page of the Times.
Well, I mean, Labour have been very clear. This is one policy that they're sticking to at the moment. They haven't rolled back on this one yet and said that, you know, they will basically they'll change the rules so that there's VAT applied to fees. That will potentially put fees up by 20%, depending on how schools want to handle that. And there's figures coming out next week which will show the enrolment at independent schools have fallen. Now, we don't know for certain that's because of what Labour plan to do, but I think it's safe to say
it was the biggest drop in a decade.
that it's probably that's what it's to do with. I mean, overall, when you drill down into the figures, it shows that there'll be a 0.1% decrease in the overall numbers of pupils at private schools. So that's not a big fall. However, enrolments have fallen by 2.7% this academic year, which is obviously quite considerable. I think a lot of people will probably struggle to feel much sympathy for folk who can afford to send their kids to private school. However, a lot of people, if it means that they have to pull their kids out of private school to then go into state school, then it's actually the taxpayer end that have to pick up the slack. So, you know, it does affect all of us.
As somebody who proudly went to a comprehensive, who had for many years had a chip on my shoulder about private schools, I got it wrong because a lot of very hard-working, working-class people, you see it like shop owners, you know, they put everything they've got into getting their child into a private school. They're the ones who'll be forced out, not the Chinese overseas students who won't get bat an eyelid about the VAT.
Yeah, it won't make a difference.
Exactly, and there's someone who was one of 5 kids, and my parents never had any spare money, but they sent all of us to private schools on a combination of scholarships, bursaries, and then saving. you know, people can choose what to spend their money on. And as you say, some people really do save up for that and do make it their priority rather than foreign holidays or, you know, new cars.
My parents were the same. They worked really, really hard, both architects, not huge salaries. My brother and I both got scholarships to private school. I remember them struggling. I remember we didn't take foreign holidays some summers, and it was a huge commitment. They were just really keen to do it. But what I'm reading and what I'm hearing from the independent sector is that even if a small percentage or a significant percentage of a small school has a fall in enrolment or people being withdrawn, that could then lead to the closure of the school as a whole because it's not sustainable. And that has a huge impact on those state schools. Then it is the wealthy middle-class parents who can afford to be near the good ones. And then it is the children from disadvantaged backgrounds that get shoved
And
out
Labour
of
need
the
to be
good
careful
schools.
what they wish for, because actually the pressure on state schools with pushy middle-class sort of previously private school parents is going to be really quite intense.
These policy decisions don't happen in a vacuum. There's always a knock-on effect.
But I wonder if the Labour Party get that. I mean, we all seem to comprehend that. There is a knock-on effect. You know, those houses get hoovered up by the wealthier, and the working classes get shoved out. They end up in the bucket schools, and round we go, and the wealthiest don't care.
Well, I think the Labour Party do get it, and they've made a calculation politically that actually this is worth it because of the people like you who describe having a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They see people who are sending their kids to private school as toffs, and this is like a politics of envy, really.
But they're wrong.
They might be wrong, but it might be successful at the ballot box for them as a policy. Who knows?
But they might live to regret it further down the line.
Go on then, you choose where we go next.
We've got time for anything else. Let's have a little talk about the solar flare, can we? That could disturb the internet. This actually might do humanity a favour. Our phones might all switch off.
Well, actually, when you read the story, however, it's already out of date because these solar flares, or sunburps, as the Star decides to call it, they were due to hit at 2 a.m, which was about 5 hours ago. And the last time I checked, the internet was still working.
Well, we're still here.
Yeah, and electricity hasn't gone down. So.
Is this anything to do with the Northern Lights, or totally different?
No, I wondered whether it was, but I think that's a completely.
Where was the solar flare? Where was it?
We missed it. That's a non-story. Show a quick blast about having a pop at the Sussexes in Nigeria.
Oh, go on then.
You got a minute.
This is not the Royal Tour, yeah? So this is not the Royal Tour. So they had all their favourite things. They had women's empowerment, they had a visit to a school, they had gushing about mental health, they had a bit of polo fundraiser for Harry, loads of outfit changes, Meghan looking utterly flawless in a kind of gown in the middle of Nigeria. She's discovered, as you said earlier, she's discovered that she's 43% Nigerian, and she thanks them for welcoming her home.
Well,
I mean, I'm slightly speechless at this stage.
She said she feels at home there. Many people from GB Newsland might say, well, stay there.
And isn't it hilarious about her not even...
It is odd, because they aren't royals, and they've purposefully decided not to be royals, presumably because of that type of thing that they would have to do, maybe do it once in a while, you know.
Well, that's what they wanted to do. They were keen to do it, be worshipped and adored, but just on their timetable.
That is very odd.
Not really how it works. Well, it is in their world. That's the end of our Papers world. Thank you for now. We'll see more from both Emma and Kevin after 7:30. But for now, here's Aidan McGivern with a check on your Saturday forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or two across higher parts of central Scotland, but for the vast majority it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday, but it's going to be once again dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Where you don't have to readjust your sets. It is Martin and Isabel in on a Saturday. We're here all the way until 10 o'clock. We've got plenty more coming up for you after this break, including all the latest on the Eurovision row. See you in a moment.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It is fast approaching 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 11th of May. Today, are things looking up for the Prime Minister? The economy's grown at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
Yes, the chief economist at the ONS says the economy is, quote, going gangbusters. Might it be enough to start to close the polls and give Rishi Sunak a little bit of hope for the general election?
Gangbusters. Now, a former leader of the Labour Party claims voters aren't in love with Keir Starmer, with opposition MPs fearing the country could see a shock result in the upcoming general election reminiscent of 1992.
A right royal hypocrisy. Critics hit out at the Sussexes during their tour of Nigeria, the 12th most dangerous country in the world, after he questioned his own security here in the UK.
And this morning, dozens of motorists are braced for chaos on the roads. Dozens, I'd say thousands, with closures on the M25.
And the Eurovision final.
Up to 6,000 vehicles in both directions could face huge tailbacks. I'm here at Junction 9 to see how bad it gets.
And the Eurovision final is upon us. Sweden ramping up security amid pro-Palestinian protests.
Good morning. It's an old firm feast this afternoon as Rangers travel to Parkhead to face Celtic at 12:30. Just 3 points separate the two sides at the top of the table. We'll be joined by two-time Celtic title winner Alan Stubbs later this hour.
It's finally happening. A warm, sunny day across the UK today. But how warm will it get and how long will it last? I'll have all the details in the weather coming up soon.
A very good morning to you. I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Isabel Webster, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
A lovely morning. Great to have your company. Thanks for joining us. Now, the economy has grown at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
Yep, that means that the UK is officially out of recession, with many hoping for tax cuts over the next few months.
And this comes after former Labour leader Lord Kinnock claimed that voters in Britain are not yet in love with Sir Keir Starmer, with concerns emerging of a shock result in the upcoming election.
Yeah, it could be reminiscent of 1992, when Sir Neil Kinnock lost an election that was thought to be unlosable.
Well, joining us now is GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, always a pleasure. It's fair to say that people haven't especially warmed to Sir Keir Starmer. He's not especially the most charismatic of leaders. He's no Tony Blair, but then few are. But will it be an issue, or actually is being Mr Magnolia quite useful?
Mr Magnolia, I like that. In ordinary times, it might be a problem for him, in that we've seen again and again, despite this 20-point lead in the polls, that focus groups, people basically are a bit meh about him, and Labour more generally. But the thing is, we're not in ordinary times. The Conservative has been in office for 14 years. They've whistled through a whole load of prime ministers, including, in the space of just a few months at the end of 2022, we went through 3, including Liz Truss for 7 weeks, and the disaster of the mini budget. So these are not ordinary times, and I think after the chaos, a lot of people might think that being actually not terribly exciting is fine. I think most of the poll lead, a lot of it is people, Conservative voters sitting at home, fed up with the Conservatives, sitting on their hands or voting for reform or whatever, saying they're going to vote for reform, rather than this great love of Labour. But it seems to be, there is a feeling in the country that we've had enough of this lot and it's time for a change, which I think is why, despite the 4p off national insurance in the last few months, the polls at the moment are not shifting.
So I think it's extraordinary for Neil Kinnock to come out and say his son is in the shadow cabinet and stands to be an immigration minister should Labour win the election. Hugely unhelpful, I'm sure, for his son in all of this. But, Labour, as you say, not necessarily coming out with anything that's sort of amazing and awe-inspiring, and yet here we are seeing Conservative MPs defecting too in a matter of weeks. And yet there's good news on the economy. There's not such awful news as you might have expected in other areas. Why is that happening?
Well, because of the polls, because of the way the wind is blowing. So, yes, Rishi Sunak and the Chancellor have had some really, really good news yesterday with these economic figures. Growth, 0.6%, out of recession, 0.6%. I mean, that's proper growth. The ONS's chief economist has used this phrase, going gangbusters. But the economy's been in a pretty dreadful state for many years now, and going forward, growth projections are not good at all. And yes, I mean, Lord Kinnock has said it's no done deal by any means that Labour are going to get a landslide. It could be another 1992 situation. They just don't know. But I think it suits both parties to play to that this is not a done deal narrative, because they don't want any complacency in Labour voters. They want to get their voters out. And similarly with the Conservatives, we've seen all these, Conservative MPs saying they're not standing again, 2 defections in just the last couple of weeks to Labour. Rishi Sunak wants to believe and make people believe that it's still all to play for, because if they accept that they are going down, that takes all the energy, all the impetus away, and it doesn't galvanise people who might be wavering to come out for the Conservatives.
What was fascinating yesterday, Liam Halligan, of course, GB News' business and political economics editor, sat down with Rishi Sunak, and he pointed out to him, when you compare year on year, not quarter on quarter, and when you add in inflation and the population boost, almost 1 million in that time, actually the GDP per capita, which is what counts, the pounds and the pence in your pocket, is 0.8% down. So you can massage the figures anyway.
Gangbusters, is it?
No, exactly. So I wonder actually if people buy this. It's like, you're better off. Am I? Do people actually feel better off?
Well, yes, I don't know. And it would seem not at the moment. Of course, the government are hoping that by the time we get to the next election, maybe November, potentially, some of this will have filtered through and people will have felt the benefit of these tax cuts. But of course, you know, most people are still ultimately getting worse off because of fiscal drag. And as you say, although the economy is growing, that's largely because there's simply more people in it, more people paying taxes, because we had 750,000 more people come to the country last year than leave. But individually, less is being produced per person. And of course, we feel the economy, don't we, as individuals, you and me. Do I feel better off? Are you better off? And although, you know, inflation is coming down, interest rates are still high, and food inflation, for example, was up at 40% only a year or so ago, and inflation is coming down, but ultimately prices have still gone up an awful lot over the last few years, and a lot of people's wages haven't even begun to keep tabs.
Food's getting pricey, you know, gas bills getting pricey, your petrol, nothing's getting cheaper,
Nothing's getting cheaper, yeah. I mean, who can afford to eat out anymore? It's an arm and a leg.
A pint of beer, if you're not careful now, is like thick under £7 in the wrong pubs around London.
Things are still getting more expensive. They're just getting more expensive more slowly than they were before, so perhaps we notice it less. But we have had these huge jumps in prices that we're now all having to sort of adjust to as the new normal. But I don't think that necessarily means then that we're all going to think, oh, much better off. And of course, that's the Labour's central attack line is, do you feel better off than you did 14 years ago when the Conservatives came to office? And they're pretty sure that the majority of people are going to think, no, I don't.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Appreciate your analysis. Just to say, if you're into your politics and you've got any of the papers this morning, there's a couple of really good long reads. There's an exclusive with Akshata Murthy, the Prime Minister's wife, into what it's like inside Number 10 and how there's no sort of format for what you do as a Prime Minister's wife. And she's done this Lessons from 10 on Friday. She's had thousands of school children through. But she talks about still going on the tube, walking her dog all the time. Most people don't recognise her. She picks up food from Tesco's locally and people don't recognise her, which I thought was quite funny. And there's also a long interview with Natalie Elphick's mother, who says the reason that she defended her husband for so long against those awful sexual assault convictions was because she's a devout Catholic. And, of course, she, this week, now infamously defected to Labour. So a little bit to look forward to. Perhaps we'll delve into those in the papers a little bit later on.
Great stuff. Now it's day 2 of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's tour of Nigeria and what many are calling a royal tour on their own terms.
Well, the commentators have noted that Nigeria is actually the 12th most dangerous country in the world, and the military base that Harry travelled to is somewhere that the Foreign Office actually advises against visiting.
And of course, this comes as reports suggest the King was too busy to meet his son in the UK because he was at tea with David Beckham.
Ouch. Well, earlier we asked royal biographer and former photographer Ian Lloyd what's going on.
It's that royal brand that they need, and it's their sort of post-royal life has been waning. They've not really done very much in the last 3 or 4 years, apart from the book, obviously, and various documentaries. They need to boost the image, so they've come over here and almost used the British royal family to have this sort of show themselves as on the world stage, if you like. So. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I saw all the documentaries in Nigeria, the news bulletins. I don't know what the people there thought, who they were, you know, whether they're just celebrities or whether they're royalties. It's very unclear, I think. But, yeah, I mean, and ironic, as you say, because they want supposedly privacy and they've gone on this very high-profile tour, haven't they?
And Ian, a key point here is the security, or more to point, the hypocrisy surrounding it. Don't forget, here's a fella that went to court saying that the British taxpayer should support him in all security matters while on British soil, and yet the Global Peace Index puts Nigeria at 144th least safe country on the planet. There are 72% more violent crime in Nigeria than in the UK. Not a peep about any of that.
Well, that's it. He's supposedly, or they've supposedly hired 4 security people, and the Nigerians have put an awful lot of money behind the tour to ensure their safety in a country where most people earn £1.50 a day to survive, you know. So there's, again, a bit of hypocrisy and irony in all of that. So it's you know, in a good way, I suppose, it shows what Harry could have offered to the British royal family by going over there as a a working royal, but it highlights the fact that our royal family, the working royal family, can't get over there to Commonwealth countries at the moment. That's the other problem, the optics, if you like.
What about the language that we've been hearing from Meghan, saying thank you to the people of Nigeria for welcoming her home? Because, of course, she's discovered, hasn't she, through DNA analysis, that she's of Nigerian heritage. And yet, I'm reading this morning that she actually met Harry in the Windsor suite at Heathrow en route to Nigeria, but dislikes this country so much, where she got married and welcomed into the royal family. She didn't even want to step foot outside the airport. I mean, many people would say this should be her home. With Harry, I mean, it sticks in the craw a bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's the fact that she knows she's not 100% popular here. I mean, when she was at St Paul's with Harry for I think it was the Platinum Jubilee, they got booed. Some says there was boos the other day. So she knows her image is not 100% popular. So she probably wouldn't want to do that. And as you say, there would be irony if they're supposedly feeling unsafe in this country. If they keep regularly popping back as a couple, it seems to undermine that argument, doesn't it?
Well, do let us know what you think about that story at gbnews.com/your say. Lots of you getting in touch, commenting, funnily enough, on what Meghan's wearing, which is actually what we've all done prior to sort of falling out of love with her. She was a bit of an icon, wasn't she? But people saying, you know, why is she wearing a ball gown? And other people saying that looks like it's designed for somebody much taller than her. But aside from what they're wearing, let us know whether you think that this is a good thing, that they're out and about, whether or not she has every right to get in touch with her, I suppose, her homecoming, or if, like us, you think it's a bit strange that she feels she has more connection to a country she's never really been to than the country where she got married into.
Yeah, 43% Nigerian she claims to be. I feel at home in Nigeria, she says, to which many people might say, well, perhaps you could stay there.
OK, let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom at 7:13 this morning. And the United States has suggested that Israel may have broken international law using American-supplied weapons during the war in Gaza. The State Department said it was reasonable to assess that the nature of the conflict had created severe military challenges. However, the document also noted that Hamas uses civilian infrastructure for military purposes and civilians as human shields.
And the Northern Lights lit up the skies across Britain last night as one of the strongest geomagnetic storms for years hit the planet. Usually they are seen in the far north of the country and are caused by charged particles hitting the different gases in the Earth's atmosphere. So now you know.
And if you're planning your summer holidays, you might need to rethink your destinations. The authorities in the Balearic Islands are cracking down on excessive drinking in some tourist hotspots after locals have complained of poor behaviour, including climbing into people's homes. The sale of alcohol will be banned from 9:30 in the evening until 8 o'clock in the morning. You're going to have to scrap your holiday plans then, or just make sure you get your stash in before 9:30.
The thing about that, you know, 9:30 at night until 8 in the morning, that's the sweet spot if you're a youngster.
The Balearic Islands as
if
well.
You're a youngster, but of course, when you're at my age, it's like, get to bed. You know?
I know, but I can see as a local how irritating to have all these drunk louts on the streets and people climbing into your home. There has to be a point where you say, this is actually where we live. It's not just where you come and let your hair down once a year.
But there is this backlash against the Brits. We've seen it in Spain, in Tenerife, now the Balearic Islands. I would say this, millions and millions of pounds of our money, tourist money is pumped into your economies. This sounds like wanting to have your cake and eat it.
Take the cash and put up with our drunken, loutish behaviour. Is that what you're saying?
Swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you think this morning. Speaking of travel, you might have a few problems if you're sticking around here in the UK. Only travel if absolutely necessary. That's the advice that's been given to thousands of drivers following another unprecedented closure of the M25.
And the 5-mile stretch in Surrey between junctions 9 and 10 are now shut until 6 a.m. on Monday morning, causing delays and a 19-mile diversion.
It is the first time that this has been shut during the day. There has been a night closure already, and this is the first time since the motorway, which is one of the busiest, if not the busiest in the country, opened back in 1986.
Well, join us now is GB News reporter Ray Addison. Ray, welcome to the show. Absolute bedlam is expected, a 19-mile diversion, and I couldn't help but notice it goes past the Chessington Park. That means nightmare for beleaguered parents with kids in the back. Been there, got the T-shirt. What should people do?
Well, just as I've been here, I'm basically on a gantry above the M25 Junction 9 heading northwards near Leatherhead. And just while I've been here for the last sort of half an hour or so, I'd have to say that the traffic has nearly quadrupled. And where there was only a few cars using this exit, there's now starting to be a steady stream of vehicles who are being tailed back further and further down this motorway. I'm actually going to step out of your way so you can get a better shot. This is the exit here, Junction 9. You might be able to see on the right-hand side of your screen there the actual blockage of the road, and all they're doing at the moment is allowing through vehicles who are involved in the construction of that new bridge. National Highways obviously closing this for the whole weekend so they construct a new bridge. Now, last time, if you remember, they closed junctions 10 and 11, and we saw around a 5-mile tailback at junction 11 heading southbound. So it'll be interesting to see how bad that disruption is now. There's that 19-mile diversion route in place, and it takes people through some pretty small villages. Now, last time it wasn't too bad. There wasn't too many tailbacks in those small villages, but it'll be interesting to see what happens on this occasion. The diversion route is taking people through the A3 and the A240, and National Highways urging motorists to follow their official diversions. Do not follow your sat-navs, because they've suspended part of the extended ULEZ charges. But if you stray off of that diversion, you could end up facing that charge. If you're not somebody who normally drives in this area, you could therefore end up with a penalty to pay. Now, there are going to be, I'll just step back in, there are going to be further closures. So this isn't the end of this disruption for people on the weekends. There's going to be further closures on 3 more weekends of this year. And that's going to be between July and the end of the year, we're told, although they're not too clear about exactly when. But this disruption started last night at 9 o'clock. We're going to see how busy it gets today, and it goes all the way through until 6 a.m. on Monday morning. So if you're an early riser, you're travelling into one of the major cities early on, you could find yourself disrupted if you tried to use this route. So at the moment, National Highways advising, try to avoid, if at all possible. If you can't avoid, only follow their designated routes, not your sat-nav.
Okay, top tips, Ray. Thanks very much indeed. And a little tip to add to all of that as well, if you're trying to use the train as an alternative to being on the roads, a little warning that the rail line that cuts through Surrey and crosses over the M25 and the A3 and the other roads, South West Trains, they've got engineering work to be trying to get down to the coast today. So it's going to affect lots of people. So yeah, good luck with that if you're out there today.
And that's your route home.
Train, yeah, well, I suppose I don't really know what I'll do. Maybe I'll stay here all day. You lucky things. Aidan McGibbon here with your forecast now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or 2 across higher parts of central Scotland. But for the vast majority, it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday. But it's going to be, once again, dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Lovely stuff. Now there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize of the year so far, a whopping £20,000 tax-free.
Yeah, imagine having that in your bank account this summer. That would be pretty good. But you've got to be in it to win it. You can't win unless you've joined the competition. Here are all the details.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, we're going to be talking Eurovision. Things got a little bit fruity now. It is, of course, the final tonight, and everybody loves it because it's camp and kitchen, all very exciting, but it's gone a bit political and a bit serious. Sweden having to ramp up security, and this is all about Palestine and Israel. Details next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Many of the people that you had invited to come and speak were people who've been elected in their own countries. I'm thinking of people like Suella Braverman. I'm thinking of Nigel Farage, who has been a member of the European Parliament, of course, had an enormous impact on British politics. And Viktor Orban, who has been elected and re-elected. Many people may not care for the Prime Minister of Hungary, but he's certainly an elected person.
And in addition, we had about 15 to 16 members of the European Parliament who were also elected, and they really live in Brussels. And you would imagine that Brussels, being the head of the capital of the EU, would allow elected members of its own parliament to have an opportunity to voice their views. So I think what was very interesting about this is that the mayors overplayed their hands, so that because they overplayed their hands, all public opinion became entirely on our side. It was so evident, so transparent, that this was really an attempt to use the police instead of arguments to react to our conference, that it was a real direct threat, and it is still a direct threat to the freedom of assembly and to free speech.
So how do you think it leaves it? Is it more likely or less likely that there'll be future bans?
I think this is a trial run. What I'm really worried about is that if the future of democracy and free speech depends on the ruling of one judge, and you have to remember that 3 other judges ruled against us, then democracy is in big trouble. What worries me absolutely is that a strong body of political opinion amongst established politicians believes that it is okay to cancel conferences and to crush the people's opinions and prevent the freedom of assembly. Democracy actually depends on these foundational values.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Isabella Martin this morning. If you're tuning in a bit confused, it isn't Monday morning. It isn't Monday afternoon. It is, in fact, Saturday, but we've stepped in with a few absences and illnesses around, so we are here taking one for the team, aren't we?
We are, and it's very hot in the studio, and indeed the hotly contested Eurovision final takes place this evening amid some confusion after the Dutch act was banned from rehearsals as officials launch an official investigation.
Well, all of this comes as pro-Palestinian demonstrations continue to surround the event, calling for Israel to be banned in the same way that Russia was. Well, let's discuss all of this morning with showbiz reporter Hayley Palmer. And Hayley, you normally want to come in here and talk showbiz rather than politics, and we won't get too deep about it all, other than to say, you know, obviously this is really... There's a lot of sentiment, or isn't there? A lot of feeling around all of this, and yet a lot of people saying this Israeli girl, you know, she's not actually responsible for any of the actions on either side. She's just there to sing.
Yeah, I just looked up her age. She's only 20 years old. That is so young to be taking all of this on. You know, she's got people outside her hotel room. I can't imagine how that must feel. I'm sure she's got a very strong team around her, but nevertheless, it's not specifically her fault. So I do really, really feel for her. I mean, look, I'm a massive Eurovision fan. I'm all about Bucks Fizz, the Fizz, skirt ripping days, Katrina and the Waves. That's my thing, and I like a good song. Like I think I'm getting old because I watched Ollie Alexander's performance and I honestly feel like I can't watch it. I'm like, oh, it's too much for me. So maybe I am old-fashioned, but I just want to hear a good song. I feel like the song just goes... It floats. It doesn't do anything for me.
The Irish contestant doing some sort of like witchcraft and
that's very scary.
Satanic acts on stage.
Looks like a Satanist.
It's a bit freaky.
The Exorcist.
Baby Bambi.
But let's talk about, apart from the politics of all of this, because you know there are, and I know that you're convinced, you've got a theory that actually Israel could win out of all of this. But the other hotly contested country, forgive me, I need some more coffee, is Croatia.
Yes.
And that's Baby Lasagna.
Baby Lasagna. Now, they have a track called, I think I've got this right, Rim Tim Diggy Dig. There's actually a dance routine, which I won't do that now, but it's kind of going viral and everyone's doing it on YouTube and stuff. And, you know, it's kind of a silly song. But
so it's a bit more Eurovision.
It's a bit more Eurovision, but I'd rather see a silly song win than a political vote, to be honest. So I think that's in with a good chance. And my vote is going to go on that. I'm going to put a bet on that. But I also think Switzerland are in with a really good chance. They're represented by Nemo. The staging is fantastic. He's on a flat disc and he's sort of sliding and he's jumping. I think that's really, really cool. So for me, it's Croatia, Switzerland, or I think Ireland might do it, you know, because everyone seems to be talking about that. And it is the first time that they've qualified in about 7 or 8 years. So I think they could be with a chance.
Didn't they? They always absolutely sure thing.
I'm going to quickly talk about the bookies odds, because you're right, Croatia, are they 1.8? They were when I last checked. What are they now?
I think that's what I read, but I heard that Ollie Alexander is the 11th favourite to win.
He's got no chance, especially after he had a pop at the Union flag. But I want to come back to Israel quickly, because they weren't even down to qualify. As I say, 10,000 people protesting outside this lady's home. Eden Golan is the contestant. She went on, she smashed it. She not only qualified, she's now the second favourite at 4-1. Social media sentiment seems to be people are taking the sympathetic ear towards her. As you said, it's not her conflict. She's got no involvement in the geopolitics. She's just a performer. Don't stop the music. People, I think, are going to sweep behind her. I think she's got a chance of nibbling this.
I do think she may have a chance, but I also think there might be some big things happening tonight. I mean, they put extra security around the stage. Apparently, it's impossible for people to get onto that stage. But for me personally, it does concern me what might happen tonight at the Eurovision. Like I say, I want to bring it back to the music. I want to bring it back to the love and everyone coming together. And that's, for me, what I want to see. We've got enough going on. People want enjoyment.
We need some escapism. We don't.
We do. I don't want to hear this.
During the Eurovision.
No, exactly.
That, you know, people would argue we have to talk about these things.
But I feel like people can go on Twitter and talk about that.
is that no matter which perspective, whether you're here for the music or for the politics, it's going to be good for ratings. Everyone's going to be tuning in to see what...
It is, and if you don't like it, don't tune in. And if you do like it, let's have a party tonight.
All right, well, on that note, Hayley, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll catch up with you to see how it all turned out very soon.
Superb. Now, still to come, we'll be joined by former Celtic football captain Alan Stubbs. That's next, because it's the big Old Firm derby today north of the border. This is GB News with Isabel and Martin.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
The International Monetary Fund has estimated that Russia will outgrow all advanced economies in 2024. This is in spite of all the sanctions the West has imposed on Russia, in spite of its removal of the SWIFT banking system, in spite of the fact that Germany has almost entirely weaned itself off Russian gas, and in spite of the 50,000 soldiers who have died and the endless resources it has poured into the Ukraine war. So, what are we missing here? Why is Russia going to grow more than the rest of us? Well, it's simple. Russia is willing to make use of its own energy resources to provide abundant supply to its citizens. Increased supply means lower prices, and cheap energy is inextricably linked to economic growth. But since 2008, the United States has grown at twice the rate of the United Kingdom. The big difference is that America has much lower energy prices, while the UK insists on masochistic green policies. But it's no surprise that the Green fanatics in the Scottish government, where they know how to be fanatics, have had to backtrack on their flagship greenhouse gas reduction target. The SNP has committed to reducing Scotland's CO2 emissions by 75% by 2030. Now, the Climate Change Committee has reviewed its policy and advised that the absurd reduction target is out of reach.
Can we accept the CCC's recent re-articulation that this Parliament's interim 2030 target is out of reach? We must now act to chart a course to 2045.
It is time to recognise the truth that net zero by 2050 is unrealistic and unaffordable. It's time we rid ourselves of this foolish and costly idea that will simply make people cold and poor. We need to prioritise cheap energy for Britain's consumers and for companies, for industry, enabling economic growth that will benefit us all.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back, 7:35 is your time. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Isabel and Martin.
And it's time to go through all the sports now with broadcaster Aidan McGee. Good morning, Aidan.
Good morning, good to see you both.
Right, let's quickly talk about Moisey. David Moyes' last game as West Ham boss, and it's going to have a big impact at the bottom of the table because they're playing Luton Town, who are one beneath Forest.
Exactly. Well, look, it's going to be more of a celebration at West Ham. I think, look, there's been lots of conjecture, lots of consternation, lots of rancour, actually, in the last couple of months about David Moyes, whether he's going to stay at West Ham. He delivered 2 European finishes. He delivered a European trophy, of course. He rescued them from relegation, not once back in 2017, but also when he came back to the club in 2020, achieved it again after the Manuel Pellegrini era and all the money that was spent back then. So David Moyes has every right to expect the most warm of send-offs at the London Stadium.
You think he'll get it?
Without doubt. Because look, even those West Ham fans who would rather see a change, they'd rather see a new broom. They'd rather see somebody come in and play slightly more expansive football, even if that means dropping down the table a couple of places. Even they, especially the regulars, and Sam Allardyce always used to say to me when he was in charge of various clubs, he said, the fans who go regularly know the score. Ignore the ones on social media. The ones who go regularly are the ones who can see things for what they are. And I don't doubt for one moment, especially at home to Luton, a match where they would be expected to win, I think it would get a rousing reception, and it'll clear the way then for Julen Lopetegui to take over next season.
And it's going to have a big impact at the bottom. Obviously, as I said, Nottingham Forest playing later on the day against Chelsea.
But Old Firm's huge today as well, we must say, at 12:30. I want to bring in Alan Stubbs, if I can, actually. Two-time title winner with Celtic. Alan, good morning to you. Welcome to GB News. Good to see you. I want to look at the top of the Old Firm, first of all. The top of the SPFL, first of all, because 3 points separate the two sides. It's very unusual for the title race in Scotland to still be running into May, isn't it? It's normally done and dusted by now, either way.
Yeah, it is. I think, if you look over the last few years, certainly from Celtic's point of view, normally, they'd either be 10, they've won it by 21, 12, 9, and it'll be over by now. But the fact that we've come this far in the season is a testimony really to the job that Clement has done at Rangers. He's done very well since he's come in, but recently they've had a blip at the wrong time.
Alan, I remember Graham Souness saying as far back as the 90s that it's all about the title race and what happens in those 4 games in the season. I'm thinking back as far back as your first season in Scotland in 96, 97. Celtic probably more consistent outside of the Old Firm games, but they just couldn't beat Rangers in the big games, could they? Even with Van Hooijdonk and Cadete and Di Canio. It's a little bit similar this year, isn't it? Rangers have been fairly consistent, especially since Clement took over, but they just can't beat Celtic, can they?
No, they can't, and and I think that's a huge psychological boost for Celtic going into the game today. Brendan Rodgers' record in the Old Firm fixtures is nothing short of incredible. I think he's lost one in 16 when he's been manager of Celtic. So, he's got the hoodoo sign over Rangers, and today is huge. I think there's been a little bit of psychological comments over the last week in terms of Brendan saying we're going to have a bit of fun next week, which Mr. Clement took offence to, and today is probably one of the most anticipated games they've had for quite a few years.
Is that a sign of the pressure though, getting to one or both of the managers? Do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I think Brendan doesn't really get involved in any psychological comments, but it seemed to rub Mr. Clement up, which I can see why. But all the talking today is going to be on the pitch, and I've got to be honest, and I'm not just saying this from a Celtic point of view. I do think Celtic will win the game today. So Celtic are in a good place right now since Brendan Rodgers has come back.
Well, you won your first title back in 97, 98 under Wim Janssen. Obviously, fans were a huge part of it then, as they were in many years since then. But no fans at the moment. And what sort of difference will that make? Although they will be back in next season, we understand.
Yeah, I think it's a shame really that it's come to this over the last few years where no away fans have been at the game, which I think is a huge loss to the actual game itself. I think away fans in the stadiums add so much to an Old Firm clash, but Celtic Park today will be an unbelievable atmosphere today, and I'm sure the place will be absolutely bouncing later on. To be honest, I actually do wish I'd be there because the atmosphere would be incredible. So it's going to be an intimidating game for the Rangers players. They've not dealt with it over the last number of years when they've gone to Celtic Park. They've had a tough time, and today will all be about who holds the nerve the best.
Just quickly, Alan, before we go, it'd be remiss of me not to ask about Everton, safe with 3 games to go. Some great stuff towards the end of the season under Sean Dyche, but problems ahead with the ownership perhaps, but the stadium's still looking good.
The stadium looks amazing. I must admit that the problems with Everton right now are all off the pitch. The owner needs to decide what is happening off the pitch, because there seems to be not enough information coming from the owner. A lot of the fans are looking for answers. There's talk of potential the club going into administration, which is just unthinkable or even is crazy to think about when you look at the club. But you know, Sean Dyche has done a very, very good job this season in terms of steering Everton clear from the bottom. So, you know, he just needs to try and deal with what's going on the pitch. But off the pitch, Mr. Moshiri really does need to try and sort Everton out once and for all.
Alan, great to see you as always here on GB News. We hope you enjoy the game later on. We hope better news for
Thank you.
Everton off the pitch as well. Good to see you. That's Alan Stubbs talking about the Old Firm and Everton, who of course he played for with distinction.
Superb. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Aidan McGee.
Thanks, Aidan.
Now, still to come, we're going through today's papers and the top stories with Emma Wolfe and Kevin Schofield in Making the News, and that's next. This is GB News with Isabel and Martin.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Today is a good day for the King, a good day for Britain. I'm sure you'll be hoping that those Not My King morons decide to give it a rest for a little while, because he is still dealing with an illness, isn't he?
He's still dealing with an illness, and he appears to be dealing extremely well. I think he comes from the fact that he's extremely strong and fit. I think I understand that will help his treatment enormously. And I think, as your professor was saying, it's the fatigue that can be a brutal thing when you're trying to lead a normal life with cancer. But I think that it's going to really help him psychologically to get out there, and people are going to be giving him enormous support. I mean, I know, as you say, there's an anti-monarchy brigade, but there's been an anti-monarchy brigade since there's been a monarchy. So that is not such a big deal. It has always been there. I feel that Charles is going to get a lot of support from the sort of joyousness of people seeing him and, you know, wishing him well. And I think that that's going to be immensely important to him. It's a very busy time, but I think a boost for William and Kate. William's out and about. We don't know about Kate, but I feel that the King will definitely. It's a very busy time coming up with the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, which I know he will be desperate to be a part of. Then there's the big royal season, the Trooping the Colour, the Garter ceremony, Royal Ascot, and then he is hosting the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the end of June. So it's a absolutely packed month for someone that is presumably going to get very tired.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if he gets through all of that, I think that will be absolutely massive, won't it?
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back at 7:44. It is Breakfast with Isabel and Martin this Saturday morning. We're going through the papers with the political editor at the HuffPost, Kevin Schofield, and the writer and broadcaster, Emma Wolfe. Good morning and welcome to both of you. Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is? And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah, and there's been so much, and I know we're trying to give them their privacy, but, I mean, I think lots of us really do feel really concerned about how Catherine is doing and all of that. So we kind of seize at these little snippets, don't we? So William, on the other side of the royals, on the slightly more hard-working side of the royals, he's been visiting Cornwall, 2-day trip. This is sort of the first time he's been away for a couple of days since the diagnosis was announced. He's been down in Cornwall. He went to the Isles of Scilly. He bought 5 pasties for his entourage in one of these delicious Cornish shops. jobs. And one of the
carries cash, does he? Interesting.
I don't. Yeah, well, presumably.
Or maybe you don't need to these days. You just have a card.
Maybe he had a card. I was wondering about that. How did he pay for them? And in one of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks." So it's all we have, but we have to hope that is...
I mean, he was hardly going to say, well, actually, last week when she was having X, Y, Z...
Of course.
But what was interesting is that she was felt able to ask him what we are told we're not to ask, and that's fair enough, let them have their privacy. We're all desperate to hear the answer.
No, we are, and obviously when it was announced that Friday evening of what had been going on, it was a massive shock to the whole country, wasn't it? And until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this because we just don't know.
Not forget, initially we were told until after Easter.
Yeah,
then there was the question mark about trooping the colour, but now there seems to be no sort of talk about when, and, you know, fair enough, but... You know, it does seem to be serious. So,
it does.
Again, we wish her
What's
very
quite telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses. And that pasty shop will now be, like, treasured, you know, forever. People forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this I feel at home in Nigeria vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
How to be a royal, and are the Sussexes, do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities. But I mean, William's doing it exactly right, isn't he? And he loves Tresco, which is one of the isles down there, and he used to go visit. I know, it's beautiful. He used to go there as a child, I think. So he's back down there.
It's just very sad on a human level as well, isn't it? These two brothers who obviously went through a lot growing up. Obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know
it's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him
3 miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state. Kev, let's move on to the front page of the Telegraph. Bit of politics. Voters not loving Sir Keir Starmer.
Bit of red on red, this.
Yeah, I mean, Neil, I think he's right as well. The polling backs that up. The problem for the Conservatives, though, is that they dislike Rishi Sunak even more. You know, when you look at the figures for who'd make the best Prime Minister, which tends to be the best indicator of a general election result, really, Starmer is really considerably ahead.
Well, actually, the number one choice is don't know.
Well, actually, although I did see one polling company did a briefing through the week, and it did show that Starmer is now ahead of don't know. so that's something, I suppose.
An achievement of sorts.
But yeah, it's... but Neil Kinnock is absolutely right, and Labour clearly, despite all the indicators suggesting that they're going to win, are very nervous about complacency. They don't want voters to think it's already in the bag and not bother to come out to vote. But I think at the moment, they're swimming against the tide, really. I think everyone, and all the pollsters say the same thing. Spoke to quite a few of them this week, and they're all saying the same thing. One of them, actually, from Savannah, told us this week that the Tories are heading for a pasting. That's what he said.
So, Kev, I want to ask you, strategically... Sorry, I'm being interrupted here.
No, I was just laughing because I think it's more Kevin, but go for Kevin.
I don't mind.
OK.
I don't mind. We're all friends here.
Call you Marty.
Kevin, Mr Schofield. But so, politically, strategically, what's going on here? Because, as you said, red on red, it could be damaging, or is it fired towards Labour voters to make sure that they get out and put their vote out? There has to be a political reason that he's briefing in this way.
Yeah, I think it is that. I think it's they're guarding against complacency. Pat McFadden, who's the national campaign coordinator for Labour, make the point, no vote has, it's a cliche, no one's cast a single vote yet, so the result is still up in the air. But that was why I thought it was quite strange that Rishi Sunak came out earlier in the week and said, hung Parliament, it's looking like a hung Parliament because of local elections. That is just going to encourage. That's good news for Labour because their voters are going to be like, well, hang on a minute, it's not in the bag yet, we'd better get out and vote.
But then why do, sorry to jump in, but why do such bizarre things as accepting Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party, which most people in the country won't really care about? But for core Labour voters, that is a real slap in the face. A lot of people within Labour, even some of the whips, are not happy about that decision. Why do something like that when you need to shore up your core Labour vote?
I think you touched on it there at the beginning when you said that most people, if they're aware of the story at all, will just think, oh, Tory MP goes to Labour.
Yeah.
Wow, the Tories must be in a right mess.
Yeah.
Whereas they won't drill down into the fact that this is someone coming from the right wing of the Conservative Party. It's not a moderate, it's not a wet. I mean, that's what is so alarming, really, about it. But in general terms, most voters won't even.
But does it put a message out that, wow, I mean, people often joke, if she was any further right wing, she'd be off the White Cliffs of Dover. But does it send out the message, well, if she can switch party, then so can I as a voter? Because that's where the vote's going to be won, in the red wall.
Oh, yeah, one former Tory minister said to me, you know, the problem that Labour, well, it's not a problem. He says, her views are the views of the people that Labour need to get to win the election. He says, so it's only a win, but it's exposed, he said, a lot of Labour MPs at the moment still aren't ready to go into government, because this is the type of thing that you just have to swallow.
But it's not surprising, really, that she didn't go to reform, and I suppose that plays into my point that I was going to say. The kind of Mr Vanilla, or what was it you called it, Mr Magnolia, of Keir Starmer has worked thus far because there has been this Tory psychodrama. But if he wants to avoid that vote split on the Conservatives, you know, oh no, hang on, I'm making no sense at all, because the vote split will help him out in the long run, won't it? So he doesn't mind. OK, I'm just ignoring that point.
No, I mean, I think...
It was a good point. I knew what you meant.
Oh, I don't know. But you all make brilliant points, and the thing is this just, we're a really broad church, we can accept, you know, we can go for the red wall, all of that, or is it actually storing up problems for the future? Because Rosie Duffield has been saying, look, I feel real discomfort about this, you know, this acceptance, and so do many Labour MPs.
The line of the week I heard on that, I spoke to Tom Tugendhat this week, and he said, Labour's a broad church, but they're so broad now, they're going to start throwing bar mitzvahs.
Yeah,
Let's move on. It's a great line. Now then, this clip, Emma, it certainly has got a lot of people's blood boiling. The Magna Carta targeted by geriatric Just Stop Oilers. We've got a clip. So you can see them there. There's a couple of old Dorises.
They're old. They're ladies in their 80s.
Is one of a vicar or something? She had a dog collar on.
One is a priest.
Yeah.
And one is a former teacher. And there they are, and people are filming them. No one is saying to them, stop attacking. This is in the British Library, right?
Now, luckily, they've got all the force of a sparrow hitting a garage window, and they don't manage to get through.
But why is no one saying to them, stop doing that? We're in a museum. We're in a beautiful national heritage.
What do you think when you see that, Kevin? I mean, to me, this is a sacrosanct document of global historical significance, the foundation of every liberal democratic society on earth, and it's just being hacked at with a hammer and chisel. Does that make people support their cause?
No, I don't. I think it's counterproductive. I think people will be like, well, why? This isn't going to make me more likely to support you. The people who already support it will support it, but I think most people are in the middle somewhere. Probably got some sympathy about the whole about climate change and the message that they're trying to get across. But when it comes to attacking the Magna Carta, I think people would think that
the gallery that displays the Magna Carta is closed until further notice. So little children, school children coming in to see Magna Carta will not be able to see it. So well done, these old ladies. What they said is the Magna Carta is rightly revered, blah, blah, blah. There will be no freedom, no lawfulness, no rights if we allow climate breakdown to become the catastrophe that is threatened. We must get off our addiction to oil and gas by 2030, starting now. That's how they justify this.
Oh dear, well, let us know your views. I have a feeling I know which way they will swing. gbnews.com/your say in all of that. And we say thank you very much to Emma and to Kevin. A brief papers this hour. We'll hopefully have a bit more time just after 8:30.
OK, thank you very much. Looking forward to that. I won't call you Kev next time. I'll call you Kevin. Thank you very much. Now, let's get your weather. That's the most important part of the show with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather brought to you by the Met Office. The fine and often sunny weather many of us have had recently will continue for a little while yet. Yes, there are some mist and fog patches around first thing this morning, but these will quickly burn back because there'll be plenty of sunshine around. Lots of bright blue skies on offer as we head into the afternoon. There are a bit more cloud towards Shetland, a little bit of rain here, and elsewhere 1 or 2 showers possible. Most places staying dry and in the sunshine, feeling even warmer than yesterday. Highs of around 24 or 25 Celsius. Little change as we go through this evening and overnight. It is going to stay settled. A lot of the cloud will actually clear away, so clear skies for many of us, though some low cloud pushing in from the North Sea across some eastern parts, and elsewhere a few pockets of mist and fog are possible. Temperatures generally dropping to high single figures or low double digits. We start Saturday on a fine note for many places, though quite cloudy towards eastern parts. Again, any mist and fog will quickly burn back, and then once more another largely fine day for many of us. Just watch out for the potential for some showers to develop over high ground towards northern England, and some of these could be heavy. Temperatures even higher than today for some of us, highs of around 25, possibly 26 Celsius. On Sunday, there's the risk of some showery rain, which could turn heavy, possibly thundery, developing across western parts. Further east, however, it's likely to stay largely dry. Again, plenty of sunshine here, and temperatures could get even higher with highs of 26 or 27.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something that makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
A very good morning. Welcome to the show. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 11th of May. Today, are things finally looking up for Rishi Sunak? The economy grows at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
Yes, the economy is going gangbusters. Those are the words of the Office for National Statistics chief economist. But are you beginning to feel better off?
A former leader of the Labour Party claims voters aren't in love with Starmer, with opposition MPs fearing the country could see a shock result in the upcoming general election, reminiscent of 1992.
And a right royal hypocrisy. Well, critics hit out at the Sussexes during their tour of Nigeria, the 12th most dangerous country in the world, after he questioned his own security in the UK.
Thousands of motorists are bracing for chaos on the roads with closures on the M25 today.
Up to 6,000 vehicles in both directions could cause huge tailbacks. I'm here at Junction 9 to see how bad it gets.
Go on, Ray. And the Eurovision final is upon us, with Sweden ramping up security amid ongoing pro-Palestinian protests.
Good morning. It's been the worst kept secret in world football, but Kylian Mbappe has confirmed he'll be leaving PSG this summer. Where next for him? That's what we'll be asking. It's a big day also of Premier League and Old Firm action. And in cricket, it looks like the end for the Test career of England's legendary bowler, Jimmy Anderson.
It's finally happening. A warm, sunny day across the UK today. But how warm will it get and how long will it last? I'll have all the details in the weather coming up soon.
I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Martin Dormley, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
And don't panic, it's not Monday morning. You haven't missed the weekend. We've stepped in. There have been a number of sicknesses and holidays and things over the weekend. So we've taken one for the team this morning, haven't we, Martin?
It's delightful to be working with you again,
yeah,
Isabel.
likewise. Well, leading the programme this morning, the economy has grown at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
And that means that the UK is officially now out of recession, with many hoping for tax cuts over the next few months.
Well, this comes after the former Labour leader, Lord Kinnock, has claimed that voters in Britain are not yet in love with Sir Keir Starmer, with concerns emerging of a shock result in the upcoming election.
If you recall, back in 1992, Kinnock lost an election that was thought to be unlosable.
Well, joining us now is GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster to go through those political stories. Let's start with the good news, shall we? Look, a lot of people will be pleased to hear we're out of recession, we're doing better than America, France, Germany. Fabulous. But in real terms, are people feeling better off? And that will be the challenge, won't it, for Rishi Sunak, to translate that into the feel-good factor which causes people to vote for him?
Yes, because the government desperately needs some good news, and they have got it in the shape of this 0.6% growth of the economy in the first quarter of the year. And that's a proper substantial amount of growth, but are people going to feel it? Well, of course, we've had 4p cut from national insurance in the last few months. That's going to beginning to feeding through. Although I have to say, given one of those was in the autumn, one of those in the spring, the polls, it didn't seem to have any impact at all on the polls. Now, some talk of another fiscal event in the autumn before a general election, possibly another 2p off there. So that would be 6%. I mean, they'd have basically cut the rate of national insurance in half, which would be a really, really big deal. But the definition of madness is repeating the same thing and expecting to get a different result. Is it that people have stopped listening? And also, of course, despite these tax cuts, because of fiscal drag, because of the tax thresholds not moving, ultimately, most people's taxes have still been going up.
I think that's the key. And you put that alongside the cost of living and all of the other problems. Yes, inflation's come down, but the cost of goods from a year ago is still more expensive. People just aren't feeling better off, despite the hard work that the government would say that they've been making.
Yes, exactly. So you can look at these figures, and Rishi Sunak and the Chancellor will rightly be able to say, look at this, we're turning a corner, the plan is working, etc., etc. Inflation has come down massively. We expect it to hit the Bank of England's target soon. Interest rates are not moving at the moment, but they expect that they will by the summer. So all of those things will help. But will it be enough come November, December, whenever the elections held, I still think, mid-November, shortly after the American election. Let's see. Will it be enough that people will really, really be feeling it? And even if they are beginning to feel it, all the last 14 years, you get to a point always, there's a political cycle, isn't there? You get a government in, the people are hopeful, etc., and then gradually they get fed up of them till it comes to a tipping point where they just think, we've had enough of this lot, it's time for a change, even though there's not massive enthusiasm for Labour.
What was brilliant yesterday is Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, sat down with Rishi Sunak in Oxford. Rishi Sunak expecting to trumpet this good news, and Liam said, actually, when you look at year on year compared to a year ago, not the last quarter, if you add in inflation, if you add in population boost, largely driven by immigration, thick end of a million, actually, GDP per head, that's the pounds and pence in your pocket that you notice, is actually down 0.8%. So they may have given a bit of good old-fashioned top spin here. But let's move on to the red-on-red trouble here. Lord Kinnock, of course, a failed former, well, didn't even get to be Prime Minister, did he? But he's saying voters aren't in love with Sir Keir Starmer. That's a bit below the belt, don't you think?
Well, you hear this time and time again from focus groups and pollsters. Somebody said to me a few weeks ago that basically people are very non-committal about Keir Starmer, but they think he's a bit more normal than Rishi Sunak, because, of course, we know that Rishi Sunak's very wealthy. And the basic feeling is, well, it's time for a change. But, of course, yes, it's not great for Lord Kinnock to say this in some ways, but also I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because Labour do not want to be complacent, or certainly what they don't want is for their voters to be complacent, because if everybody feels it's a done deal, they're not going to have the same energy, voters aren't going to feel compelled to turn out necessarily. So I don't think it's unhelpful for Labour, and certainly not unhelpful for Rishi Sunak, which is, I think, part of the reason why, after those really pretty awful local election results, Rishi Sunak was pushing, the one result, the one sort of manifestation going forward of how that might lead to a hung Parliament. It's not very likely that that would be replicated, but Rishi Sunak wants to say to his MPs, stick with me, we're not necessarily going to go down, you're not necessarily going to lose your seat, we have a plan. And also to voters, don't think it's all over. Don't think you can just take your vote off to Reform or sit at home and it won't matter. The Tories have still got a chance.
Well, if MPs are defecting to Labour from the Conservative Party, who knows where voters might go at the election. Catherine, thank you very much indeed for explaining all of that to us this morning.
Great stuff. Now it's day 2 of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's tour of Nigeria, and what many are calling a royal tour on their terms.
But commentators have noted that Nigeria is actually the 12th most dangerous country in the world, and the military base that Harry travelled to is somewhere that the Foreign Office is actually advising against visiting. Well, this highlights the hypocrisy over their security fears here in Britain.
And this comes, of course, as reports suggest the King was too busy to meet his son in the UK because he was at tea with David Beckham.
That's got to hurt. Well, let's talk now to the Royal Broadcaster and photographer Helena Chard. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Saturday morning.
Morning, Isabel.
Let's focus first of all on this. I don't know, it's not necessarily a royal tour, it's a publicity trip, whatever you want to call it, a PR trip for the Sussexes. I read in the papers this morning it's more selfies than handshakes, a little bit of the dancing and the necklace bearing that we're used to seeing on the royal tours. I mean, what exactly is the thrust of this?
I mean, goodness me. I mean, it's certainly lively, isn't it? A great photo opportunity, etc. I mean, everyone loves the Invictus Games. It's a guaranteed press moment. So for Prince Harry, Meghan, this is perfect. They, love being in the limelight. They're having a lot of fun. It's elevating them, and I think Invictus Games sort of elevates them in the world of philanthropy. And they're taking advantage of the obviously with the PR that's going with this, and they certainly do need to keep their platform, their royal platform. Not to forget as well that this is very good for Nigeria, and we know that they were invited by the Nigerian Chief of Defence, and this all goes back to the Invictus Games last year in Dusseldorf. And it's about Nigeria as well, showcasing themselves in a different light. And they want to be host in, I think it's 29. And so it very much is about Invictus, but I say it's about Invictus but then you see there's lots of different things going on today. We've got the training session with Unconquered, which is lovely. That's all about empowerment, self-esteem, well-being. A lot of it is about well-being, so it's positive. I do know that I think Meghan is going to be co-hosting an event, Women in Leadership, today. So that's an interesting one. I suppose, in a way, we can think there are lots of people within the military, far more in Nigeria, something like 230,000 people serving, of which 30%, funnily enough, are women, as opposed to 17% elsewhere. So that's very interesting.
Okay, Helena.
There's lots. Yes.
Could I ask you about this slight furore, with some justification, you might say, about the hypocrisy around security concerns? You know, Prince Harry banging on that the taxpayer should cover his back when he's back on British soil. Yet here he is in Nigeria. The Global Peace Index has it as down as the 144th least safe country on the planet, right down in the bottom. 72% more violent crime in Nigeria. Not a peep about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's madness, I feel. And they're very much in the hands of the Nigerian government. I mean, this obviously, again, has not been signed off by our government, and, you know, anything could happen. But remembering as well that not just that, the security and everything that they're providing is being paid for. So that's another controversy, because I think at least three quarters of the country are in poverty. So why should they be paying for security?
Helena, one of the reasons
they
chose to go there as well was because, of course, Meghan's been looking into her heritage, and she's discovered that she's 43% Nigerian, and she's described feeling like it's a homecoming, feeling very much at home in the West African country. And yet we're told, I read in the paper this morning that she actually came to the UK to pick Harry up en route there, but didn't step foot out of the Windsor suite at Heathrow Airport. So little is her affection, or small is her affection, for us here in the UK, where she had a huge wedding, welcomed into the royal family, but feels more at home in a country she's never visited before.
Absolutely. You know, a big shame that she couldn't be supporting Harry, actually, at St Paul's at the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games. And you know, she's making it more than clear that she doesn't want to set foot in the country, to do with lots of things. But I think actually because she doesn't want to, she I think doesn't feel loved. I mean, both Harry and Meghan do love to be loved, and I don't think she feels that love here in the UK, understandably. And there's a security issue, which is still, you know, there's court cases going on, and I don't think we're going to see her anytime soon. But yes, to see her in Nigeria, feeling at home and obviously very happy and relaxed, it's the irony, really. It's unbelievable, but interesting to see how things will pan out, and also be interesting to see how this unofficial pseudo sort of royal tour, comparing it to ones which are signed off by our government. So that would be something to look into.
Okay, Helena, and Meghan said, "I feel at home in Nigeria," to which many people might say, or maybe you could stay there. Helena Chard, always a delight to have you on the show. Thanks for your input.
I have a feeling she'll be wanting to jet back to LA just as soon as she can.
Creature comfort.
It's 8:14. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom for you this morning. And Israel has ordered more Palestinians residing in Rafah to evacuate as it extends its encroachment into the city. It called on people to move north to the expanded humanitarian area in Al-Mawasi. The city's acting as a massive refugee camp for hundreds of thousands of displaced Gazans.
And the Northern Lights lit up the skies across Britain last night as one of the strongest geomagnetic storms for years hit the planet. And usually they are seen in the far north of the country and are caused by charged particles hitting the different gases in the Earth's atmosphere. So now you know.
And if you're planning your summer holidays, you might need to rethink your destinations. The authorities in the Balearic Islands are cracking down on excessive drinking in some tourist hotspots after locals complained of poor behaviour, including climbing into people's homes. Well, the sale of alcohol will now be banned from 9:30 in the evening until 8 o'clock in the morning. Somehow I think that's going to top. And I think that's going to clip the wings a little bit of Brits abroad in Magaluf and Ibiza this year, don't you think?
That's a sweet spot, 9:30 at night till 8 in the morning.
Yeah, maybe, but, you know, yeah, the drunks on the street, it can't be fun if you're a local. I can totally see it.
Well, having said that, though, the Spanish are complaining, the moaning about the Brits in Tenerife, now the Balearic Islands. Millions of pounds of tourist money gets pumped in. You can't be cake and eat it.
Well, but maybe they'd rather have the family tourists than the drunken teenagers there to...
Boring old people like us.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, they just want us. That's fine by us if they stop serving alcohol after 9:30. Right, talking of travel, the Balearic Islands might be a bit ambitious. You might be struggling to get out of London today. M25 closing for the first time in its history in the daytime. So the advice is being given to thousands of drivers today to follow those diversions.
Yes, an unprecedented closure in the 5-mile stretch in Surrey between junctions 9 and 10 are now shut until 6 a.m. on Monday morning, causing delays and a 19-mile diversion.
Well, let's check in then, shall we now? Who are we speaking to? Ray Addison on this? Yeah, Ray Addison is out on a gantry somewhere in Surrey to give us an update. And when we spoke to you a little bit earlier, Ray, it looked as if that closure was in place and the M25 uncharacteristically quiet for this hour of the day.
Yeah, and it's just got a lot more quiet. I'm slightly distracted as you were doing the introduction there because some kind of National Highways vehicle has just pulled across the exit, the only last remaining exit here at Junction 9, and completely blocked off the road. And there's 2 workmen now doing something on this slip road exit. And I can see far in the distance all of the vehicles that were using Junction 9 as that exit into that 19-mile diversion have come to a complete stop. And I don't know how long that's going to last for, but right now this seems to be, in addition to the expected reason for the delay, obviously the construction of that bridge. This large heavy vehicle has now pulled over, 2 men out on the road, and complete standstill now for all traffic. So if I just move out of the way, you can see there we've got the barriers there across those 4 lanes of the M25. This is junction 9 at Leatherhead. The direction we're facing is northbound. You can see the traffic maybe on the right-hand side. That's still flowing. They've come back in on junction 9, but we have this major disruption now occurring on this 10-mile stretch lasting until 6 a.m. on Monday, so that National Highways can install concrete beams for that new bridge. And of course we had that a few weeks ago. We had the closure of junction 10 to 11, and we saw those 5-mile tailbacks at junction 11. So a 19-mile diversion, people actually being asked and advised by National Highways to come off at junction 8. You can come off at junction 9, but they were asking people to come off at junction 8. I'm wondering if what we're seeing now, right, that vehicle has now started moving, so those men out of the road now. You're going to be able to see on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to be able to see that vehicle now moving down the slip road itself. That's the vehicle that had pulled across and was blocking the final remaining lane of this motorway. And you should be able to see very, very shortly all of that built-up traffic moving back and coming off of this slip road here at junction 9. So that 19-mile diversion affecting the A217, the A240, the A3, taking all of that traffic. There's the police cars now, and you can start to see these vehicles now as well, taking people past Chessington World of Adventure, causing a lot of significant delay to people trying to get to Legoland, Windsor, Thorpe Park as well. But major works ongoing here, causing significant disruption, and up to 12,000 vehicles every single hour expected to be affected.
Superb stuff. Thank you, Ray Addison. More bedlam on the M25. They'll probably have that sorted in about 5 minutes in Japan or China.
You're absolutely right. But for anybody who doesn't live in and around the M25, it's hard to overstate how big a deal this is, because obviously it wraps around the city, 9 million people inside the M25, and it is the busiest motorway in the country. So I'm sorry if you are watching us from Scotland and not that fascinated by the M25, but for us down here, it's a pretty big deal. And as I say, unprecedented, never been closed before since it's opened in the daytime.
And a special heartfelt sorry to the parents trying to get to Chessington World of Adventures today, stuck in that 90-mile tailback, all the kids in the back, and you're just a dad and you're just desperate to go in for a beer. Maybe that's just me.
I had my 12th birthday party at Chessington World of Adventures.
Did you?
And I remember, I don't know if I should say this on the TV, I fibbed to one of the ride operators that I was 14 in order to get on. But my mum had dropped us off at the age of 12. Now I'm as a mum, I'm thinking, gosh, that's quite brave. She left me in a cohort of friends aged 12 to go around.
I think that explains a lot.
About me?
Yeah.
Because I did look 20 when I was 12. I just grew up really quickly. Anyway, maybe you're on your way this morning listening to us in the car on the way to Chessington World of Adventures. Godspeed if you are. Let us know how you get on.
OK, now it's Aidan McGivern with your all-important weather.
Oh, it's going to be a scorcher.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or two across higher parts of central Scotland, but for the vast majority it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday, but it's going to be once again dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, if the forecast isn't enough to cheer you up this morning, how about this? We have got our biggest cash prize so far on offer, a whopping £20,000 tax-free, Martin.
Yeah, imagine all that moolah in the bank. Well, imagine no longer, because it could be yours. But you've got to be in the draw to win it, and here's how you get stuck in.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, still to come, it is the Eurovision final tonight, of course, with Sweden ramping up security amid increasing pro-Palestinian protests. We're discussing that next, and I think that Israel have a cheeky outside bet to win it. That's next. This is GB News with Isabel and Martin.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Scotland, home of Hamza Yousaf's hate crime law, aka the Clype's Charter.
Clype, a delightfully Scottish word for a grass, a snitch, or in the context of Russell Finley's opening gambit during the hate crime debate at Holyrood last week, reporting your friends, family and neighbours to the police for alleged hate crimes. The SNP responded by doubling down on the new law's ability to protect vulnerable victims.
I am confident that we have robust legislation that will protect those who are vulnerable to harm.
But other victims are emerging in the wake of this new legislation. As the bill moved through Parliament, concerns rose of police inundated with vexatious complaints, targeting individuals who had committed no crimes. The first fortnight of the new law gave rise to nearly 9,000 complaints.
The vast majority, at least 95%, have been deemed not to be crimes.
False reporting is nothing new. A social post from Scottish Conservative Murdo Fraser was flagged by a trans rights activist in November.
Police decided that no crime had been committed, but nevertheless that was recorded as a non-crime hate incident.
And Alba Westminster leader Neil Hanvey says he too has been targeted under pre-existing legislation.
I've been the victim of at least one of those complaints, and that's taken up the time of police officers.
Thick skin can be expected of our elected officials, but what about the public? 74-year-old Morag McDougall-Brown says she was reported to police by a neighbour, and the experience has taken its toll.
I hate to think that anybody like me or similar to my age would ever have to go through this, because I really don't think I will ever go over it.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You are watching and listening to Isabella Martin. We've also been gossiping with Aidan McGee there about their love life as well. We'll have more on that maybe a little bit later on in the programme. But let's turn our attention now to Eurovision. Now, I have to say, your say this morning, absolutely full of people saying, I'm not interested in Eurovision, I don't like all of that nonsense. But actually, it's not just about the show now and all of the camp or fabulous, whatever view you have on the music. It's actually turned quite political. And this is all relating to Israel and Gaza.
Absolutely. And the hotly contested Eurovision final, of course, takes place this evening amid some confusion after the Dutch act was banned from rehearsals as officials launch an investigation.
Well, all of this comes as pro-Palestinian demonstrations continue to surround the event, calling for Israel to be banned in the same way that Russia has been.
And we're absolutely delighted now to be joined by 1981 Books Fizz Eurovision winner Jay Aston. Jay, it's absolutely a delight to talk to you on this day, a day, of course, when you made history with Books Fizz. Let's just talk about that moment. Everyone remembers the skirts getting ripped off, but what about the feeling when you won? It must have been the absolutely magnificent moment.
It was amazing and it changed our lives. It was quite historic.
we didn't realise it at the time, and we only won by a few points. So I think the skirt rip definitely helped. But we went into this sort of at the end of the show, we went into this big arena, and then it was just flash bulbs going off. And for the next 2-3 years, we literally were in and out of different countries in Europe, all over the world. Our lives changed because of that silly song that meant nothing, and it was only 3 minutes long.
Eurovision, isn't it? It should be about silliness and meaninglessness, and yet it seems to be being hijacked by political issues now. Do you have any sympathy for the contestant from Israel who herself hasn't come out on any particular side of the argument, just happens to be from the country in the centre of a big geopolitical row? Should she be treated like this?
I do feel very sorry for her because she's 20. You know, to me, she's a young girl or young woman, and she'll have all of this conflict. So she's going on stage and she's got cheers and boos, and it will, in a way, tarnish her career. I mean, I'm sure she'll be very successful in her homeland, but it's just really difficult. It does seem to be that Eurovision, which is meant to be a bringing together of people to just listen to music and it to be a happy event, is more and more often being taken into a political arena, and it's being used for that purpose. I mean, we didn't realise it back in the day, but we'd had a threat actually by the IRA, and although we knew there was some kind of problem because we had all this extra security, we were unaware of what it was. Thankfully, it all went off very well then, but it is... You know, it's frequently kind of hijacked for these reasons. So I hope it goes well for her. I mean, people are protesting outside. They have a right to protest, but I think booing her is not going to change anything on the ground in Gaza, is it?
I think, Jay, that one thing that could come out of this is that the public watching this, many of whom would have been ambivalent or neutral, and as you say, not especially interested in the politics. They're there for the Lambrini and the feather boas and just the ding-dong.
Lambrini.
Well, you know what I mean? They're there for the old-fashioned fun of it all, you know, that camp kitsch get-together. Suddenly it's become something quite different. Could actually that feeling of this 20-year-old Israeli woman being so attacked and ostracised end up going in her favour? Because we know that the general public love an underdog.
That's true. I am very interested to see what happens, because you get the vote from the kind of their judges that are more technical from each country. But then when it goes to the public vote, you can be at the bottom of the leaderboard and you can go to the top when the public vote happens. I mean, obviously, we did really well with Sam Ryder, and he was doing really, really well. Of course, we all sort of voted for Ukraine at that time. 2 years ago, and it changed everything, and they shot to the top. So we'll see how the public feel about this situation, and I guess that's why it's become a political event, which it shouldn't be. But
the winner tends to have some sort of political story behind them, perhaps, and maybe that will happen tonight. If it isn't Israel or whoever the sort of political vote goes in favour of, who have you got your money on? Because there's lots of talk around Croatia and baby lasagna, and Ireland called Bambi Thug. Now, for me, of the two, Bambi Thug is all a little bit demonic and a bit frightening, but maybe that kind of is the spirit of the crazy.
Well, I guess she's got a gimmick, it can be to your advantage. I do think at the moment, Baby Lasagna, the Croatian song, does seem to be literally in the lead. So probably I'd put my money on that one. And Bambi for good merit, probably second. But I think Israel will come, probably in the top 5. Sadly, I'm not sure about our song. Although it's good, it's not a great song. He's a great performer, Ollie, but I don't feel... I hope we're on the right side of the leaderboard and not down the bottom.
Great many people watching this, Jay. I said earlier this week, let's bring back Bucks Fizz. It was an era of innocence, of bubblegum, of fun, a foregone era, if you imagine. And like now, everything is so politicised. Don't you think we just want to get back to basics? Keep Eurovision just about fun and love?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think we'll be going back. I mean, Mike's actually just announced that he's leaving the band at the end of the year, and we've only got a couple of major concerts left, a farewell concert for him in November. So I think you struggle with that one. But then, Martin, how's your skirt ripping skills? I mean, I know you're a bit tall for us.
Well, it's a bit. At least get me a drink first, Jay. Yeah.
Well, maybe
I think on that note, we might say goodbye. Oh, otherwise we're going to get a call from HR.
No, carry on, don't stop.
Do you want to keep going?
No, go on.
All right, Jay, appreciate it. And I know you'll be raising a glass to Ole Alexander this evening, come what may. Thanks very much indeed.
Now, that didn't go where I expected it to,
No.
but in a good way. Let's move on. Let's calm my pulse. Now, still to come, Kylian Mbappe is off. He's given up on Paris Saint-Germain and he's off to Madrid. And that's all in the sport next with Aidan McGee.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dale Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad, and it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust it's been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
Just keeping an eye on all of your views coming into your say, and in amongst them was one from Mrs Webster.
Yeah.
Complaining that you got your facts wrong there, Martin.
I did.
Fact-checking from the Webster household. What was she saying?
So I said there's going to be a 90-mile tailback today, but it wasn't that.
It was a 19-mile diversion, which is different.
Journalistic
also,
licence.
Michelle H. has got in touch. Isabel, the M25 was closed for the whole weekend back in March. This is not the first time it has been completely closed. You are right, but as I've been saying all morning, it's the first time it's been closed during the day. It's been closed at night as well, so it's been closed till Monday. So there, as my director has just said in my ear. So anyway, now we've put the scores right. Let's go to the sport.
How come in the fact checks you look good and I look bad?
I don't know. I'm selectively picking the ones I want to read out.
Because you're the boss. No problem at all. Now, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast, of course, with Isabel and Martin. Now it's time to go through all the sports news, and it's Aidan McGee in the studio. Let's talk about Mbappe, Kylian Mbappe, of course, Paris Saint-Germain bowing out. He looked absolutely devastated in the week when Borussia Dortmund knocks them out of the Champions League, and now it looks like he's off.
Well, I was going to ask you your favourite Bucks Fizz song, first of all. While you're making your mind up, I'm going to do the... I'm going to do the sport.
Yeah.
Sorry. Kylian Mbappe, look, it's no great secret that he was going to go. And he's announced this week, or yesterday, in fact, he said, it's my last year at PSG. I will not extend, and the adventure will come to an end in a few weeks. They've got 2 league games left. They've got a French Cup final against Lille on May the 25th, and that'll be him over and out. Now, I look back on the 7 years he's been there. He joined in 2017 for, I think it was £125 million, something like that, for Monaco. He's a Parisian. Look, they regularly won the league. They won the league every year, I think, apart from one that he was there. And but he just couldn't land the Champions League. They got to the final in 2020 against Bayern Munich. No fans in the ground. They lost that one. And obviously in the week, as you said, looked devastated to lose against Borussia Dortmund. And then it's all eyes on where he goes next. 255 goals. He's won a World Cup in 2018. He scored a hat-trick in the final, which ultimately France lost to Argentina at the end of 2022. But he is worth whatever Real Madrid would pay for him if he was worth any value. His contract is out, so they're saving on the transfer fee, but the money instead, £128 million, we believe, will go on a signing-on fee. So that means his wages, £12.8 million a season, probably aren't as high as they would be for a player commensurate of his level. But if you're getting £128 million up front in your pocket, then that's going to smooth things over a little bit. But Real Madrid is going to be an outstanding move for him. That's where he wanted to go. That's what agents are increasingly doing these days, Martin. They're plotting the player's timeline. And the same thing's going to happen with Erling Haaland, I think. When they get to 25, 26, that's when they make the big move to Real Madrid and they confirm their status as a Galactico. But that's Kylian Mbappe over and out at PSG. A couple more weeks of him there, but then we're going to see him to move to Spain.
There's no chance of any Premier League team having a nibble trying to get him over here.
Arsenal flirted a couple of months ago back in January, I think, Arteta was asked about it. But I don't think if you're Arteta and you want to look like an ambitious club, a club that's preening to go towards the Premier League title for the first time in 20 years, you don't want to be distancing yourself from a player of that magnitude. But in all reality, everyone has known in football. I mean, he nearly joined Real Madrid 2 years ago and eventually signed the extra 2-year deal. So I don't see him going anywhere else. Real Madrid looks a natural fit. He's a big personality. He's got a bit to prove because he's not won that Champions League, of course, despite everything he's achieved at international level. But we're going to see him go there, and I think he'll look the part.
OK, we've done loads of football all morning.
Yes.
Let's move now to the crack of leather on Willow. We're talking about Jimmy Anderson ending his Test career.
Well, yeah, it looks like it. I mean, I don't think it's his decision. I think it's going to be the decision of Brendan McCallum Baz, as we know him. He's played 4 out of the last 5 England Tests, so he's still very much part of the side. But the next time the Ashes comes round, Martin, he's going to be 43 years old. You have to jump off the carousel at some point. Now, I remember him back in 2008 when they played the Ashes, and he was instrumental in reclaiming the Ashes that time for England as a very young player. But I think we might get one more farewell this summer when they face the West Indies. But after that, just like Mbappe, I think he's going to be exiting stage left. But what a career. I mean, 700-odd Test wickets in 187 Tests. And as I say, still very much part of the squad and made an impact last summer as well during the Ashes as England plundered a draw.
OK, Aidan McGee, superb as ever, and we'll see you in the next hour. And then we will dive more into the upcoming Premier League action later on today.
Oh, something to look forward to. Thanks very much, Aidan. Right, still to come, we're taking a look through the morning papers in the company of Kevin Schofield and Emma Wolfe. See you in just a moment.
Yeah, mate, superb.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence, to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, you know, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. You know, it just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pensions Scheme." The fight for these veterans and their families lives on, because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, grab yourself a cup of tea, a piece of toast, settle in. We're going through your Saturday morning newspapers in the fantastic company this morning of Kevin Schofield and Emma Wolfe. And Emma, we're going to start with you with a comment piece in The Express following on from Sir Keir Starmer's announcement yesterday that he's going to reverse the Rwanda deal, the Rwanda bill, just as soon as he gets into power.
Yeah, well, this is really interesting. I mean, there's a couple of angles here. Firstly, do we believe Keir Starmer that he's got the magic, you know, he's got the magic solution to all this because he's given it a fancy new name? He's going to spend, what, 75 million on this, on this really intractable problem that no one else has managed to deal with. But also, agreed, Rwanda is a ludicrous policy. Agreed, the cost is eye-watering, and maybe now Sunak is saying maybe flights will get off the ground in June, not July, so we're actually bringing it back. But I wonder, is it right, if it is working, if it does become a deterrent, and I've got no truck with the Rwanda scheme, is it right then for Keir Starmer? He's sticking to his guns. He's saying, I'm going to scrap it. Even if it's working, I'm going to scrap the scheme, which really just adds insult to injury. It's, you know, even more colossal waste of taxpayers' money, what, 500 million, probably north of that. So, I mean, there's sort of a mess. Obviously, Keir Starmer wants to look tough on this. He keeps saying this same odd line about smashing the criminal gangs, using international law, and then this elite border force that he's got up his sleeve.
Elite Border Security Command Unit. Kevin, featuring MI5 and £75 million of money. That's about what they spend on hotels in 1 week. What I find fascinating about this is this notion that you can just smash the criminal gangs. We've been trying that. The National Crime Agency has tried that. We've linked that. We spent £500 million with the French. We've arrested multiple individuals. The latest one is the Scorpion, Barzan Majid. He was nicked in Iraq. And yet, at the same time, Sir Keir Starmer was giving this announcement yesterday. If you looked out the window, 200 people rocked up in dinghies.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that they've already surely been trying this and it hasn't worked. It's unclear as to how it would suddenly work under a Labour government. And also, you know, the point of the Rwanda plan is to make it a deterrent. Now, I'm sure the people smugglers are looking at the same opinion polls that we are. And if they're thinking, well, hang on a minute, we're going to get a Labour government by the end of the year who have committed to getting rid of the Rwanda plan, then where's the deterrent? It's gone. We might as well just keep coming, which the figures suggest is happening. It's up 35% already this year compared to last year. So the government have stopped talking about the numbers coming down. And again, Rishi Sunak pledged to stop the boats. That's the problem for him politically, is that, you know, it's a very simple pledge to make, It's so difficult to actually
We've got
implement.
a Labour shadow cabinet member coming on in around 10, 15 minutes, so we will ask them about it. But I'm not clear if they could find a third country that was deemed safe by the Supreme Court, whether they actually would continue with the policy. If it's actually Rwanda that they've got the problem with, or if it is the issue of deporting people without actually having a case heard.
I think it's the issue.
It's more about whether or not they are legitimate asylum seekers.
Labour, the party, would find it very difficult. The forced deportation to anywhere, even if it's somewhere nice, I just don't think, or somewhere safe.
Well, they've mentioned Costa Rica, which I've heard is a wonderful place to live. The quality of life in Costa Rica, and they're not having any. They don't want to take off.
And Botswana is a fantastic place as well. That's also.
There's quite a few Brits w'd quite like to get a £5,000 tax-free payout, get sent away 5 years.
I will move to Costa Rica. They can give me some money as well, and I'll do it.
Kevin, let's take a look at the front of the eye. They are saying that the Treasury is working on a further tax cut. The question is really whether or not that will move the dial for the government. We've had all this good news, and yet people just don't feel better off.
No, and it's another 2p cut to national insurance. Now, they've already cut 4p off national insurance, and the polls, if anything, are getting worse. So I don't really see why they think just knocking another 2p off it is going to produce any tangible political benefit for them, not least because they're talking about announcing it in September. I'm not sure when it would be implemented, but if we're going to have an election, maybe a month, maybe 2 months at most after that, no one's going to notice it in their pocket, and they're certainly not going to notice it in time to give the Tories any kind of political benefit. So it just feels to me like it's far too little, far too late, really.
Yeah, I think people are starting to believe, aren't they, Emma? You know, the Conservative Party, always genetically in its DNA, the party of low tax. We haven't had that. We've got the highest taxes since World War II. A lot of people might start to think, all that time ago I voted for Boris Johnson. Did we get Jeremy Corbyn?
Exactly. And look, as we've said before, it's people are voting with their wallets. People are feeling poorer. They're not going to notice 2p off national insurance for a month or two as a kind of obvious bribe, an obvious bung before the next election. They're not fools.
They might think, you know what, I'll just be taxed even more under Labour, and think that a 2p tax cut, whether or not they notice it or not, will just resonate. Maybe that's the theory anyway.
Well, that's theory.
It's not moving the dial,
but it's a bit of a Hail
yeah.
Mary pass, really, for them, I think.
Right, it's Britain. So, of course, it's sunny today, which probably means it's going to thunder and chuck down with rain tomorrow, Emma. Let's talk about the weather. We love it.
It's a bit depressing, this, because we are going to have... I mean, this is basically summer. So today and tomorrow is basically summer. I just heard from a friend in Stoke who's watching saying, we've got storms here tomorrow. You know, we've just had a few days of proper... And I think the mood has lifted. I think people... You know, we were in Westminster yesterday and you were talking about people sort of strolling around, getting out to the pubs, all of that. It's a lovely feeling out there. But, you know, apparently after we've got a day or two more, and then we've got thunderstorms and very, very unsettled weather.
And then the warm weather will be back.
We'll
easily get
Will we have a summer?
Yes, we will.
Weather forecaster Webster.
Yes, we will, but it will be earlier. I have a theory that our summers now are more sort of May to end of July, and August and September start to get a bit dodgy. I've noticed.
Yeah, well, I did notice last night. I was out, not out, but I was I was giving someone a lift.
Taking the bins out. There you go. That's a massive downgrade from being out last night.
Yeah.
I drove somebody somewhere.
I had to quickly clarify that. And I noticed it was just like such a lovely warm evening, and people were out, sort of walking with their kids. It was just, it makes such a difference.
Obviously, we don't go out, but we hear them outside living their lives as we take out the bins.
Here first thing in the morning, you're not out.
Well, this morning I was cycling in at 5, and there were people who were still out. And I felt very old because they were in mini skirts and they were still clubbing.
Yeah, I remember those full-on distant days. Anyway, this caught my eye. Kevin, cat flaps should be banned. What on earth is this about? Cat flaps.
So this is a peer. There was a debate yesterday in the Lords, and Lord Blencathra says that it would basically help preserve garden birds. Because, I mean, the numbers are... And we've got a couple of cats, and I think a cat flap, not having a cat flap, or certainly not, or try to keep your cats in, is quite cruel, because cats need to be outside. They go bananas, really, for indoors all the time. But they kill 260 million mammals a year in the UK. Now, that includes mice, obviously, and rats, and a lot of birds. He says basically keep them in so that they don't kill all this, or put a collar with a bell on.
That's what we've done.
Which makes
We've got
a huge
collar
difference,
with a bell.
because the birds hear the bell coming and scarper.
So he's not saying cat flaps are problematic, just letting your cat outside. I thought there was something actually wrong with cat flaps.
No, he does say here, he says, I would make...
Which is even worse.
Sorry.
Is feed our birds in the garden with a bird feeder, and then we have a cat. It's like we're enticing them in and baiting
It's like a hot
them.
buffet for the cat.
And our cat has just discovered his murderous abilities. He was just recently a kitten, so now he's becoming a cat.
My cat got catnapped when it was 6 months old.
No.
We got it back.
Oh, phew.
Got catnapped. And do you know what? I bought this sat-nav device for the collar.
Like an AirTag.
Yeah, and it was so big, the cat was like dragging it. I thought, I've got to take it off. We've got a cat flap, and I actually swear by it, because otherwise the cat just does his business on the floor. Cat flaps are brilliant.
You've got to let them out.
No, you've got to have them.
Do you still have this sat-nav on your cat?
No, it was too big. But
just get an AirTag.
Where do you put it on the cat?
On
or
their
on its
collar,
neck?
yeah. If you
It's
want
like
to see where they're
stalking it.
going. Well, it's better than a sat-nav, my
See,
friend.
I'd be fascinated to find out where they go.
Yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
love to know how far
I wish
they
they
go.
could
You've
tell
no
you.
idea.
Absolutely. I feel like there's lots they don't tell us.
Well, he was tarting around with the neighbours, you see. That's what happened.
That's what they do. Posh Why was he stolen?
No, he's a moggy.
Oh, right.
He's just good looking.
Good looking.
Yeah.
One of those.
Harry.
Harry the Mog.
Harry people like.
Right. OK, well, we're going to say goodbye to Kevin and to Emma, and hello to Harry and Hector, my cat, at home, if they're watching. It's a good day for bird hunting. Aidan McGibbon has all the forecasts for you now.
What happened there?
Harry and Hector.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or two across higher parts of central Scotland, but for the vast majority it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday, but it's going to be once again dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently, it's been made from organic fruits grown in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it, I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her products. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So why did they go?
Has gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying we don't want your jam. We're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show. And she's, I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking. But I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist? Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. It is Saturday, the 11th of May. Today, we're asking, are things on the up for the Prime Minister as the economy has grown at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone?
And a former leader of the Labour Party claims voters aren't in love with Sir Keir Starmer, with opposition MPs fearing the country could see a shock result in the upcoming general election, reminiscent, of course, of 1992.
A right royal hypocrisy. Critics hit out at the Sussexes during their tour of Nigeria, the 12th most dangerous country in the world, after he questioned his own security here in the UK.
And this morning, thousands of motorists are braced for chaos on the roads with closures on the M25.
With up to 6,000 vehicles in both directions every hour, we could see major delays. I'm here at Junction 9 to see how bad it gets.
And the Eurovision final is upon us. Sweden, though, is ramping up security amid pro-Palestinian demonstrations.
It's a big weekend in the title races, both north and south of the border. The Old Firm kicks off at 12:30 at Parkhead, just as Manchester City get underway at Fulham. We'll also hear about Mauricio Pochettino's warning to the Chelsea hierarchy. And in tennis, Andy Murray is primed for the French Open.
It's finally happening. A warm, sunny day across the UK today. But how warm will it get and how long will it last? I'll have all the details in the weather coming up soon.
I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, top story this morning. The economy has grown at the fastest rate in 2 years, outpacing both America and the Eurozone.
Yeah, that means that the UK is now officially out of recession, with many hoping for tax cuts over the next few months.
Well, this comes after the former Labour leader, Lord Kinnock, claimed that voters in Britain are not yet in love with Sir Keir Starmer, with concerns emerging of a shock result in the upcoming election.
Now, you may well recall back in 1992, Neil Kinnock lost an election that many thought was simply unlosable.
Well, I suppose with comments like that, it's really helping. You know, a little bit of red on red there, and Lord Kinnock might not have realised that his own son is in the shadow cabinet, stands to be in government if Labour win. Comments like that, I'm sure, really unhelpful. Or maybe it's exactly what the Labour voters need to hear in order to galvanise them and make sure they do turn out, which they failed to do in the numbers that everyone was expecting in the local elections. Well, let's get the thoughts this morning of the Shadow Minister without portfolio, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who joins us from Wales. Very good morning. Great to see you. Not only a little bit awkward for your colleague then in the Shadow Cabinet, but unhelpful red on red this from Lord Kinnock, a grandee of the party.
Well, first of all, very good to join you, but I'm sorry, I've only just joined, so I haven't caught what the comments are. Because I didn't see the previous clip because I couldn't hear it. So
sure,
perhaps you could just explain to me what
Absolutely, with pleasure. So this was an interview that Lord Kinnock gave to Radio 4. It's on the front of the Telegraph this morning, where he feared a 1992-style disappointment may occur, where he himself lost an election that was deemed unlosable, and he fears that voters are not yet in love with Sir Keir Starmer and warns that we could see a repeat of 1992.
I think that's a prescient warning to every single person in the Labour Party, from the Shadow Cabinet to MPs generally to all other representatives and party members, that we take absolutely nothing for granted. And I think that it is very good advice to be saying that. It's a message that Keir Starmer frequently gives to all of us, quite rightly. Not a single vote has been cast in the general election yet. And that is a reminder of us being out there fighting for every single vote, which is exactly what we will do. That's what, in the local elections, indeed in Blackpool South, where I was in recent weeks. Of course, we got that enormous 26% swing, but that happened not only because of what's happening at Westminster, Keir Starmer's changing of the Labour Party, but also it happened because of the real hard work and graft of activists on the ground.
Yeah,
and
but what you're saying is something different, forgive me. What you're saying is there's no room for complacency, and that is a point that all members of the Labour Party need to bear in mind. But what Lord Kinnock here is actually pointing to is somebody who is presiding over a 20-point poll lead at the moment, and still people are not in love with your leader. It's hardly a ringing endorsement. In fact, some people could say that that's actually cutting away at his success and could do him some harm.
No, I don't agree with that. And obviously, look, I'll have to look at Lord Kinnock's comments in a bit more detail and see the context as well, as you can imagine. But at the same time, I think the central message that we have come a long way as a Labour Party, but we know we have to go even further to win trust. That is an absolutely sound point to make, and that is precisely what we will be doing. We take absolutely nothing for granted. And whilst I think most people would say the transformation of the Labour Party under Keir Starmer's leadership from our worst defeat since 1935 back in 2019 to where we are at the moment is a quite remarkable one, we all know that that is not complete. We all know we have to continue trying to gain the trust of more and more people. And that is, frankly, precisely what we will do going forward, heeding whether it's Lord Kinnock or indeed anyone else setting out that that's what we should be doing.
But, Nick, you must nevertheless admit Sir Keir Starmer is no Tony Blair. Tony Blair could play the guitar. He had Oasis in 10 Downing Street. Here's a guy who resonated with the public, a fantastic orator, somebody who switched on the optimism, the need for change. Back in 97, I covered that election, the dying days of the John Major regime, mired in sleaze, eating itself, self-immolation. History is repeating itself in that sense with the Conservatives. But what you don't have is a Blair-type figure to get the people really, really excited. So Keir Starmer is Mr. Magnolia.
Well, I don't necessarily agree. I think Keir is somebody. I'd say, by the way, he's a much better five-a-side footballer than Tony Blair, though Tony might disagree with that. What I would say, though, is that every politician, every leader is a product of their time. And this is a very different time from 1997, because in 1997 compared to now, the economy was in a very different position. Public services were certainly on their knees in 1997, but in 2024, I would argue the challenges are even greater. It isn't just about public services, once again, being in a dire state after a long period of Conservative rule, but also the cost of living crisis at a level that, frankly, it wasn't at in 1997. And what we need in 2024 is not one of our leaders of the past. Attlee was right for the post-war era. Harold Wilson was right for the 1960s. Tony Blair was right for the 1990s and the years after that. But what we need for 2024 is a different type of leader. We need a leader like Keir Starmer, who frankly understands the scale of the challenges and is a serious figure for serious times, who is willing to put in that hard, difficult work that is required to tackle the profound challenges we face. And we saw that, frankly, yesterday in his speech about creating a border security command unit.
Well, we'll come to that in a minute, but just, we will come to Rwanda in a minute, but just on the point of your endorsement, I suppose, your faith in Sir Keir Starmer as the right man for the job at this point, will you put your money where your mouth is then and rule out any sort of election pact with the Liberals, a Lib Lab pact?
There will be no pacts going into the general election. We are aiming for a...
What about coming out of it?
Labour government. Well, coming out of it, I'm never going to prejudge the judgment of the British people. But one thing I can say...
Not ruling it out, then?
We will never do a deal before or indeed after the general election with the Scottish National Party, because their values are completely inimical to ours. But more broadly, in terms of numbers in the House of Commons, the reason we don't get into this discussion is because we are aiming to win. We do not go out there aiming for anything less than a Labour government with a working majority, and that's absolutely what...
Forgive me, just to check that I've heard that correctly, you are ruling out any sort of deal with the SNP after the election, not ruling one out with the Liberal Democrats, but you're trying to tell me that's nothing to do with the fact you don't have enough faith in your own party to win an absolute majority.
Well, the reason that I'm saying that in respect of the Scottish National Party is that anybody looking from outside can see, obviously, that our values are completely different. We believe in yes, certainly we believe in strong devolution, but we believe in the union of the United Kingdom. They do not. That is so fundamental that all I'm doing is stating the obvious to you in terms of the fact that there are no circumstances in which we could come to any arrangement with the Scottish National Party. So that's just making that obvious point. More broadly, in terms of other parties, the reason I'm saying to you as I am, which is that we are not in any sense planning for deals either before or after the election, is because we are absolutely determined to get a majority. And the swings that we've seen, Blackpool South 26%, the swings in Tamworth, in Wellingborough, Selby and Ainsley, of course, these are all very significant swings that would point towards that, which is what we're doing.
Well, the thing about power sharing deals, Nick, you know that nobody wants to do them until they have to do them, and then suddenly they'll jump into bed with whatever it takes to get the vote over the line in terms of the majority. I digress. Let's move on to border control. Sir Keir Starmer yesterday rebadging what you've offered before, the so-called elite border security command. Sounds a bit like something you promised before, but with a different fancy name. £75 million sounds like a lot. That's actually only about the amount of money spent on hotels in 1 week. And the key strategy seems to be smashing the gangs overseas. I put it to you, we've been doing that for years. The National Crime Agency has been doing that for years. We've given £500 million to the French every year. That hasn't worked. This week, the Scorpion, a man called Barzan Majid, an Iraqi citizen deported from UK, one of the biggest people smugglers into the UK, smuggled so many people into Britain, he's forgotten the true number. He's been nicked. He'll be replaced immediately. Isn't this? It sounds great, it sounds effective, but really, unless we actually stop the boats getting to Britain, unless we turn them back to France, they will continue to become, because Britain is such an attractive proposition.
Well, I don't agree with that analysis. But let me just say, first of all, Martin, I've actually been...
In what way don't you agree?
Well, I'll come to that, but let me just say, I've been down to Dover. I've actually seen the work that our frontline law enforcement are doing. I've been across to France as well and seen that work. And it isn't a criticism of what frontline law enforcement officers are doing. It's about the lack of leadership, the lack of competence of the government. Now, why would the Border Security Command be different, which is the fair challenge that you're putting to me? Now, with our Border Security Command, first of all, you have a commander who reports directly to the Home Secretary. But what they do is they bring together the different organisations that are involved in this. So from Border Force, the National Crime Agency, Crown Prosecution Service International, Immigration Enforcement, but also very crucially MI5, which allows all these organisations to share information, the information that they need. We also need to be sharing information with Europol in The Hague as well. And the reason we do that is in order to make sure that the arrests, just finish this point, Martin, I'll come back to your point. Make sure that we are actually tackling the people smuggler gangs at source across Europe, and we treat it like we have counter-terror operations with, yes, the commander and the unit, the additional specialists that we can recruit with the additional £75 million, but also the powers. Things like serious crime prevention orders we've been using so that we can restrict what people do prior to conviction in areas like counter-terrorism, were successfully transfer it here. It's a comprehensive plan to bust the gangs, not just a gimmick.
Yeah, and forgive me for interrupting. We did hear extensively from Sir Keir Starmer on that plan. James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, today saying that this will turn the UK into an asylum sieve, the asylum capital of the world. But we're almost out of time, and I really quickly want to ask you about another story that's making headlines coming out of Labour HQ, and that is private schools. A new report has found that enrolment in independent schools has fallen by 2.7%. That is the biggest drop in over a decade, and this is believed to be as a result of reticence, fear, ahead of this huge 20% increase in fees that you would be levying on private school pupils. Do you think that this could become a policy that you come to regret if you do indeed implement it? Because all the word that we're getting from the independent sector is that you've hugely underestimated the number of children that will then have to return into the state sector as schools are unable to sustain the low level of pupils that can still afford those extortionate fees.
No, I don't. And I think if you look at private school fees over the last 10 years, they've risen very substantially indeed. It's up to the independent schools themselves, by the way, whether they want to pass on all of this to parents or not. But the Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies has looked at this policy, looked at the fact it will raise around about £1.3 billion. And what that enables us to do is to put around about 6,500 additional teachers into our state sector. In my view, this is a fundamental issue of fairness for not just, yes, if parents want that choice, if parents want to pay for their children to go to private school, they can continue to do so. But it also levels that playing field a little bit for the 93% who go to our state
have
school.
to interject. I know we're out of time, but I need to make this point. Don't you think, just look at the makeup of private schools now. You have so many people from overseas. They won't care about the fees going up. They'll still keep paying it. British, hard-working families who give everything to get their kids into those schools, they'll be forced out of it. It will hit those who are aspirational, middle working classes, people from China, people from Asia. They'll just keep paying the money.
But also, the reason this matters to everybody is that those middle-class families who can no longer afford the now extortionate fees will be able to afford the houses near the good state schools, pushing out those children who aren't from such wealthy backgrounds to the worst schools. And it is the most disadvantaged who will suffer at the hands of a Labour policy, will it not be?
I'm sorry, but on the first point, it's up to the independent schools the extent to which they wish to pass it on. But secondly and crucially, I don't accept for a minute that the 93% who go to state schools don't have aspirational parents as well. This idea that it's only the 7% who go to independent schools.
There are families who make huge sacrifices which will just not be able to continue in that vein. But you don't address the point about those from most deprived backgrounds actually being affected by this policy as well.
No, because hang on. The most deprived backgrounds, the 93% who who go to state schools will benefit significantly from this policy in terms of mental health support in every school, in terms of additional teachers. So the most vulnerable actually will get a better deal in the state sector as a result of this policy. So actually it's the opposite effect to what you've just suggested.
OK, Nick Thomas-Simmons, thank you very much for joining us and being so forthright this morning on Breakfast. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you.
Pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, tell us where we're going next, team. Are we on to our next, or are we taking a break? Oh, we are. We're going to the M25 because we've been told travel is only allowed if absolutely necessary or advised, as thousands of drivers are following the unprecedented closure of the M25.
Yeah, and the 5-mile stretch in Surrey between junctions 9 and 10 are now shut until 6 a.m. on Monday, causing delays and a 19-mile diversion.
Well, it is the first scheduled daytime shutdown of all lanes on the M25 since it opened back in 1986.
Well, joining us now is the intrepid GB News reporter Ray Addison, stuck somewhere on a flyover around the M25. Ray, what's the latest?
Well, the latest is the traffic here. I'm in Leatherhead, just overlooking junction 9 of the M25, where that closure is taking place. And the latest is with the traffic, it's increased considerably. It's often at a crawl and sometimes at a standstill. Although if you take a look behind me now, you'll see that it's not too bad at the moment. So it seems to be intermittent, and we are expecting it to build throughout the day. This is, of course, a full weekend closure until 6 a.m. on Monday, so that National Highways can install concrete beams for that new bridge. That was the reason for the last closure as well, as work began on that new bridge over the M25. AA warning this is going to be incredibly busy today and tomorrow. Up to 6,000 vehicles in both directions forced into that 19-mile diversion. And of course, people wanting to really enjoy the sunshine this weekend, one of the hottest weekends, if not the hottest weekend of the year. People heading to Thorpe Park, Legoland in Windsor as well. People commuting between Heathrow and Gatwick would be using this stretch of the motorway, and they are going to be disrupted. Now, we understand National Express are putting on extra coaches for people as well, but they'll have to travel along that diversion too. And so National Highways saying only travel if it's completely necessary, because remember those 5-mile tailbacks that we had last time and all those little villages hit by all that extra traffic. Although we did see last time it wasn't as bad as expected at some points, as people heeded that advice. So this route's taking people through the A217, the A240 and the A3, and so it's actually going past Chessington World of Adventures in Oxshott as well. So if you're headed there, the diversion's taking you there, as you will. Now, people are being warned, though, don't follow your sat-nav. Don't follow your sat-nav. Follow the official diversion, because the official diversion takes you on a route where you won't be charged extra for ULEZ. ULEZ, of course, is, I think, £12.50 a day. If you don't pay it, you can get a £180 fine. Now, if you stray from that official route, you could end up in an area where you're being charged. If you're not aware of it, you could end up with that penalty. And so people saying only travel if necessary, and be careful that you only follow that official route. And I think you can see now the traffic is slowing. I can see just heading towards me now, it's slowing to a complete standstill at the moment.
OK, Ray Addison, thank you for that report. Excellent as ever, and bedlam out there. And you know that 19-mile diversion past Chessington Adventure Park. What a nightmare that's going to be for parents. Got the T-shirt in there myself. Stuck in that traffic jam.
It's always on hot days as well, so you're going to have the screaming kids in the back of a boiling hot car, and nightmare. I just want to read out a couple of your say views. Paul Anthony's been in touch. Having worked at a well-known private school in Wimbledon, many kids are from modest backgrounds where the parents put everything into their kids' education. Also, the school's a charity and relies heavily on large donations from the wealthier parents and sponsors. Do keep your views coming in on this, because a lot of people are saying, I don't have any skin in the game. My kids aren't in private school, but I can see that this policy is flawed. What do you think? Let us know. gbnews.com/your say.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or 2 across higher parts of central Scotland, but for the vast majority it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday, but it's going to be once again dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, if the weather isn't enough to cheer you up, and frankly it should because it's absolutely scorching out there, but if it isn't, we have a £20,000 cash prize, tax-free, which, let's face it, everything's taxed these days, so that's not something to be sniffed at.
Superb. And imagine having all of that cash in your bank account this summer. Well, imagine no more, because here's your chance to win the lot.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, can Nottingham Forest do it and do the great escape to avoid the drop from the Premier League? Well, a win today would make them safe, but it's all up in the air. They face Chelsea at 5:30. Aidan McGee as your sport next.
Someone's excited.
Yes.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry, remember him? He appears to have fully turned his back on the UK as he listed his primary residence as the United States for the very first time in papers published yesterday. So interestingly, Harry listed the date on the formal US residency forms as the 29th of June 2023, last year. So that was the very same day he was kicked out of Frogmore Cottage in Great Windsor Park by his dad, the King. Charlotte, thank you for joining me.
Okay.
Are we just putting 2 and 2 together here with the significance of this date? Because there were stories during the rounds today that Harry chose that date specifically because he was so hurt about being booted out of Frogmore by his dad.
Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like he's trolling his dad a bit, because he could have said that he's been a US resident since 2020 when he quit the UK and moved to the States, but instead he chose the exact day that his dad kicked him out of Frogmore. But the reason his dad kicked him out of Frogmore was because he'd slagged off Camilla in Spare. And, you know, and his dad, apparently it was a really difficult decision for Charles because, of course, no dad wants to kick their son out of their home. But he went beyond the pale. So Charles took the difficult decision to say, look, Frogmore's been empty for years anyway. We've spent £2.4 million doing it up for you. And now you've, insulted our family in your books best. Why is he so hung up on Frogmore? Because this is the country he was desperate to get away from. This is a house he didn't particularly want to live in and, in fact, didn't live in.
Well, he was forced, by the way, to pay £2.5 million to fund the renovations after it all kicked off. I mean, would that have anything to do with...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that sort of galvanised his anger towards the whole situation. He thought he was getting a fantastic freebie. And there was, there were a few reports at the time that Meghan actually thought she was moving into Frogmore House, which is a much grander property. And she sort of felt a bit sort of tricked or confused and hadn't quite realised it was actually a cottage, which is only a mere 8 bedrooms.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Just had a shot of espresso. He's buzzing now. He's like, was it you? Is it me? Is it you? It's me, it's you. Anyway, I'll go. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Isabel and Martin. Don't worry, it's not Monday morning. You haven't overslept, missed the whole weekend. We've stepped in. There's been sort of rota jiggles and we've taken one for the team, haven't we, Martin?
We have.
You're doing a 12-day week?
Yeah, I'm just done 5 days, doing the weekend, doing the next 5 days. That's going to be 12 days. My record is 19 days.
God, this place would fall apart without you. Well done. Top work.
I'm falling apart being here. Anyway, let's move on
the
now.
espressos. Just necking them.
Time to go through all the latest sports news. Broadcaster Aidan McGee is here with us. It wouldn't be a sports round without me banging on about Nottingham Forest, but today it is relevant. It's all to play for at the bottom of the table.
Well, why not? I mean, look, it's a huge game for Nottingham Forest after all the travails they've suffered this season with the managerial change, all the financial issues, the financial penalties as well because of profit and sustainability issues. They have a chance to secure themselves for another season, and that cannot be overstated. Martin, I mean, just staying in the Premier League in the last 15, 20 years, it's become existential. It's more important to be here than actually do anything in it. And so for Forest, who obviously spent a period between 1999 and 2022 outside of the top flight, to secure a third season in the top division is absolutely enormous for them. And Marinakis has spoken out. The owner said that, we're disappointed we didn't get the appeal. Nuno Espirito Santo said likewise. We've got Murillo, they got the centre-back saying that they're confident they're going to start. Well, I think that the club has resolved, given that Mark Clattenburg left the club a couple of weeks ago, they need to move on from this. And they've resolved to think, well, actually, we're going to get away with it this season. We're going to be all right. So let's not stop bleating about what's gone before. Everyone gets a clean slate next season and we go there. Chelsea, you never know what you're going to get. They've had problems of their own this season hugely. I mean, they spent £1 billion last summer. That puts everybody else's spending in the shade, doesn't it? It really does dwarf anything anyone else has spent. However, Chelsea don't travel that well to City Ground. They've not been there many times in recent years. They don't travel well there. And, of course, Forest won at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season. Yeah, I've got a few quid on this. I've got a few spread bets. I reckon Forest could have a little nibble here. I think it's the final home game of the season. City Ground is a fantastic arena. When that Muller Kintyre starts blasting out. I think Luton as well going to West Ham today. I mean, that will have a bearing on stuff down there, what happens down there. But I also think that it doesn't play well on the three teams who come from the Championship. I think for the first time since 1998, we've got a real chance that all three promoted sides could go back down, and that's even allowing for the fact that both Everton and Forest have been hit with financial penalties.
And let's talk about that West Ham-Luton game. So, of course, Luton played before Forest. If West Ham do win today, that obviously will re-affect things at the bottom. Let's talk about David Moyes. It's his final swan song as West Ham gaffer.
Yeah, and I think he will get a really good reception on his way out as well. I mean, it's rare that... I mean, Alan Kirbishy said to me years ago when he left Charlton, it's better to be clapped out the front than ushered out the back. And everyone knows David Moyes is leaving. He'll go and get a decent job elsewhere. I'm absolutely certain of that. He saved them in 2017 after Manuel Pellegrini, before Manuel Pellegrini took over and after the Bilic era, and he kept them up. He then came up and did the same, came back to the club and did the same thing. Then there were the European finishes, top tens, and some of the players they've signed there as well have really burgeoned under his management, have been absolutely outstanding. Declan Rice among them, who went off to Arsenal. You got Paqueta in midfield, you got Jared Bowen up front, Michael Antonio. We thought he was finished 3 or 4 years ago. David Moyes seemed to be able to eke a little bit more out of him, and so I think he has every reason, given that they won the Europa Conference League last summer as well, to be really celebrated today. And they should beat Luton Town at home, but you never know when a club has to fight for their life.
Fair to say, a lot of Hammers fans have been grumbling over the months and years about the way that Moisey plays, not the most dynamic of gaffers.
Maybe not. I quite enjoy watching his teams, actually, I have to say, and I've covered him at most of the clubs he's been at. However, next season, when they're 4 or 5 places below in the division, and the football's better, let's see if they're moaning then, because I suspect they will be.
And a little bit of action at the top, Man City.
Man City in action at 12:30, same time as Old Firm kicks off in Scotland. Man City can go top today, or just for a few, for overnight, certainly until Arsenal go to Old Trafford tomorrow. I'm hoping to be at that game at 4:30. I'm still waiting to hear if I'm getting tickets, and it's going to be a quick turnaround, me getting to Old Trafford.
And it's on a knife edge at the top. Who do you think is going to bag it, Mystic Meghan?
I think it's going to be Man City. I do. I just think they've got an easier run in, and when they've got the prize in sight, they very rarely take their eyes off it, do they?
Superb. Always a pleasure, Aidan McGee. Thank you very much.
Good to see you both.
Hope you'll be keeping everything crossed for Nottingham Forest later on.
Never known so much in my life about Nottingham Forest as I have as when I sit with you, but I suppose it makes a change for Man United.
It does, yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Right, stay with us. Summer has finally arrived. We're enjoying a heat wave. It's hitting the country, but could it all end in tears with the thunderstorms on the horizons? We'll have all the details in just a moment.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and reincarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christie's.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
just warming up for an interview with Nikki French. She was our entry into the Eurovision and she sang Total Eclipse of the Heart, and we were just watching her rendition of it and in the break and singing along, and then you were just regaling me with another version of it that you've heard, which is not broadcastable, but highly entertaining. Anyway, for more highly entertaining segments on Eurovision, stay with us because we've got Nikki French coming up just before 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but just when we thought we could enjoy a few days of sun. The Met Office says we can expect a weekend of weather madness.
Yeah, tomorrow there is a heat wave, 27 degrees in some places, followed then by, of course, the inevitable thunderstorms on Sunday.
Well, joining us now is GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Tony, welcome to the show. Good morning to you. What's the weather like north of the border? Looks glorious.
Looks gorgeous. Still got a jumper on, though.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say I'm being a little pessimistic, maybe a little cynical, because, of course, it is at the minute about 19 degrees up here in Scotland, here in Glasgow's Botanical Gardens. And, of course, it looks very much like it's going to be a nice morning at the very least. Of course, Scotland, very famous for having 4 seasons in one day. And, indeed, this weekend, what looks like we might start with a 99, we're likely to end the weekend with holding an umbrella with those thunderstorms expected to bring rain all the way up the west coast and indeed much of the country. But right now, as you can tell with the big blue sky behind me, I was here early enough to set up the big green screen to make it look nice and sunny for you both this morning. But indeed basking in the warm temperatures here in the West End. And of course, these great weather spell that we're having just now, well, that's the reason for those clear skies last night, which of course we saw the largest geothermal storm geomagnetic storm since 2003, and of course those amazing pinky green aurora pictures coming from everywhere around the country as far south as Portsmouth. And certainly today, I think the question in everyone's mind is, is it too early to call summer yet? Because we are technically in a 3-day spell that will make this a mini heat wave, as it will, even if it does come down crashing and burning tomorrow with those thunderstorms, which unfortunately is going to lead to a couple of weeks of rain. And certainly with the weather being as it is, of course, and it may come to an end sooner than you think, we'll be looking around Glasgow to see whether we can even find a 99 for 99 pence, because of course the price of ice cream is another huge talking point as we move forward into the summer. But for now, at least, lots of people getting into position to get the best spots here in the Botanical Gardens in Glasgow.
Lovely spot there. Thanks very much, Tony. Appreciate it. Although I'm reading, according to PA, there's a warning of wildfires in parts of northern Scotland because of this tinder dry weather. I hope that's not the case. Appreciate it. Let's head to Will Hollis.
Yeah, and Will, you're in Nottingham. Of course, there's an epic football fixture, 5:30 this afternoon. Will the sun be shining down on the City ground?
Yes, well, no mist rolling in from the Trent today, Martin. Bright, clear blue skies. Lots of people here on the side of the River Trent preparing to enjoy England's 3rd longest river, taking their canoes into the water, enjoying a quick row in the morning. Lots of people out running as well, because this weekend is going to be the hottest weekend of the year so far. 26 degrees today expected in the southeast, even hotter tomorrow, but it doesn't last forever. Those thunderstorms, 2 yellow weather warnings in place for the west coast of England, and then one more for Northern Ireland. And the Met Office brings these yellow weather warnings into place for when there are risks of low-level disruption, particularly for things like traffic and travel. But there are also 31 flood alerts in place, the lowest level of flood alert. The Deputy Chief Meteorologist Dan Harris for the Met Office says that when those thunderstorms start, intense downpours are possible, and hail, frequent lightning strikes and strong wind gusts will bring additional localised hazards. But for right now, people across the country will be making the most of those summery conditions. The first time really this year that we're getting temperatures like this. The advice, though, as always, when it gets to temperatures that are moderately warm, not quite the hottest we will experience for this year. So no heat health alerts from the UKHSA, the Health Security Agency, but there are still those general bits of advice. Wear sun cream, drink lots of water, and don't go open water swimming in places that you shouldn't be.
Thank you there, Will Hollis, on the banks of the River Trent. Trent Bridge in the background. Of course, that's the city ground behind you there. Hopefully there'll be outbreaks of sunshine with showers of lager later on. Tony Maguire, also, thank you for joining us live from Glasgow. I think you might take your jumper off, when, about July?
Honestly, it cracks me up. See where the floodlights are? That's where the stadium is. And, oh, you're just so excited. Even I'm getting into it now.
I knew it'd rub off in the
Yeah,
end.
of course, absolutely. Well, good luck to them, I suppose, and nice day for it, come what may. Stay with us. Lots more to go, including, are you ready for the Eurovision final? Obviously, lots of fun and excitement and kitchen campness, but also a lot of politics this year. Or maybe it's always the way with Eurovision. We'll be talking to the one and only Nikki French in the studio for a total eclipse of our hearts.
Turn around.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Today is a good day for the King, a good day for Britain. I'm sure you'll be hoping that those Not My King morons decide to give it a rest for a little while, because he is still dealing with an illness, isn't he?
He's still dealing with an illness, and he appears to be dealing extremely well. I think he comes from the fact that he's extremely strong and fit. I think I understand that will help his treatment enormously. And I think, as your professor was saying, it's the fatigue that can be a brutal thing when you're trying to lead a normal life with cancer. But I think that it's going to really help him psychologically to get out there, and people are going to be giving him enormous support. I mean, I know, as you say, there's an anti-monarchy brigade, but there's been an anti-monarchy brigade since there's been a monarchy. So that is not such a big deal. It has always been there. I feel that Charles is going to get a lot of support from the sort of joyousness of people seeing him and, you know, wishing him well. And I think that that's going to be immensely important to him. It's a very busy time, but I think a boost for William and Kate. William's out and about. We don't know about Kate, but I feel that the King will definitely. It's a very busy time coming up with the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, which I know he will be desperate to be a part of. Then there's the big royal season, the Trooping the Colour, the Garter ceremony, Royal Ascot, and then he is hosting the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the end of June. So it's a absolutely packed month for someone that is presumably going to get very tired.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if he gets through all of that, I think that will be absolutely massive, won't it?
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You're doing, stop doing it, sit down, whether you're in the car, pull over, because I've just been told we're going to have a GB News exclusive where Martin Daubney is going to duet with our Eurovision entrance from, what year was it, Nikki French?
I did 2000, but the one he wants to sing was from 1995.
OK, the 1995 rendition of Total Eclipse of My Heart. You just committed to it, Nikki, so off you go, Martin, take it away.
Turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit lonely and you're never coming round.
Turn around.
Oh, God, we carry on. every now and then.
What a good sport. That's brilliant. Do you know what?
Warmed up.
Martin has been doing that all morning in the advert break, so thank you so much for indulging us. Well, welcome to the absolutely fabulous Nikki
Thank you so much.
For coming in. Do you get excited about Eurovision every year still?
Every year, every year, and it's wonderful. I've had hardly any sleep, and yet, as I said just now, it's the busiest week of my life. I love it. I love everything to do with Eurovision. Of course, it's a little bit difficult this year, but it's just such a wonderful event to be a part of. It's so supportive there. Everyone gets on, everyone's supporting each other. You make friends for life. You know, there's people from 2000 that I'm still in touch with.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Martin and I were saying, I mean, people keep saying to us all morning, you know, this year is a bit different, but actually, if you think about it, Eurovision has been a bit political for years. I mean, during the Brexit years, we got heavily penalised, didn't we, with the nil point?
Yes.
And then we had, obviously, Sam Ryder losing out from top spot. Perhaps a lot of people think that's OK because Ukraine had a worthy cause that year. But I suppose politics does kind of flirt with Eurovision always.
Yeah, the EBU tried desperately to keep it out, to keep politics out. You know, they clamped down. In my year, the Latvians, one of the guys was wearing a Manchester United shirt and he had to cover it up with black tape so that there was no product placement or anything. And the political side, yes, there's sort of politics. There's also neighbourly voting. You know the acts that are in the next door country to you because they're on the radio all the time. So you're going to vote for them.
Before we get onto the pro-Palestine stuff, one thing I thought was particularly uncouth this time was the contestants having a dig at each other. So whatever you think about the Israeli situation, Eden Golan, the Israeli contestant, at a press conference last night, and the Dutch contestant, Joost Klein, was extraordinarily rude towards her, crossing his arms, interrupting. And also, in your day, were people catty and were they like this?
Absolutely not. And I've always said this. One of my quotes is that Eurovision does more for international relations than any government minister ever could, because that's how it's always been. Everyone's always so supportive and really friendly, and it's such a positive feeling when you're part of that huge Eurovision bubble. It's such a positivity, and you know it's just you ride along on this bubble of Eurovision energy, if you like, and it's fantastic.
Except this year, this political overview has cast a shadow over matters. I know you don't want to get too much into that, but the sight of 10,000 protesters outside a hotel, including Greta Thunberg, as you say, performers want to perform, singers want to sing. Whatever you think about the situation in Israel, Eden Golan isn't responsible for what's happening on the ground. As an artist, to be prevented from singing must be the worst thing on the planet.
Yeah, and Ollie had the same thing. You know, he's had a lot of negativity for carrying on. And yet...
Ollie Alexander, who's our entry, because he obviously was critical of the Union Jack flag, and that's gone down extremely badly. But you're saying that's not fair. Judge him on his song, not on his views.
Well, and also, I read the whole article, and what he said was he was looking forward to waving the Union flag and representing all the positive things about it, and then made the comment, you know, that it can be divisive. So that was a little comment out of him saying, I want to wave the flag for all the positive things about the United Kingdom. So it was kind of a little bit different.
I suppose once you've made the rule, Martin, and said Russia can't participate, I mean, whoever the contestant for Russia wasn't personally responsible, but if for one country you're, you know, punishing them for the actions of your nation, then there is an argument, you know, with the United Nations and various people saying that there's this famine and there's this horrendous situation going on in Rafah as we speak. There are legitimate concerns about what's happening. You know, is that not relevant at all, would you say? Or do you think those people instead should actually boycott, take themselves out, rather than make the contestant from Israel suffer?
What I would say to that is that Russia specifically and deliberately set out to invade Ukraine, whereas Israel find itself on the receiving end of a pogrom, of an invasion from Hamas. So I think the situations are quite different. But what I'm interested in talking about, Nikki, is do you think the public sympathy now might swing behind
you've got a theory,
the Israeli entrant? Because I've got a theory. They weren't expected to make the final because of the politics. They have made the final. She went out and gave the performance of her life. The song is fantastic. You must have heard the song.
Many people have said it's possibly one of the best songs in the contest this year, which is, it's ironic.
And what's happened now is that she's gone from a rank outsider to being second favourite at 4-1. I wonder if people might sweep behind this now and think nobody likes to see an artist be bullied, be targeted like this. Might she find herself on the receiving end of a lot of sympathy votes?
Possibly, but then if people are aware of that, the anti-brigade will also be voting. So the only winners will be the telephone companies, really, won't they?
Ireland in that as well. Well, let's look at some of the talent, some of the people that are getting attention. We were talking earlier in the programme about Ireland's entry, Bambi Thug. Now, not our cup of tea, but seems to be the one people are talking about. And, this is somebody who's been doing sort of satanical acts on stage and looks a bit like self-harming to me.
I hide behind the sofa when she's on.
But very camp, kitsch, crazy, what Eurovision's all about.
Well,
Could
it's
she
mad,
win?
isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. Some of these acts are trying so hard to be radical and be out there and send a message or shock or whatever. It's like, but guys, it's Eurovision. It's all been done.
And I guess we do like looking at the extravagant acts from overseas, and this time it might be the Irish. Who's the favourite, though? You got the favourite down there.
Yes, Baby Lasagna. I mean, no prizes for the name. It's horrendous. But that's
Rintim
Croatia.
Tiggy Din.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, the name of the song. Give us the name of the song.
Rintim Tiggy Din.
Right. Do you think they are deserving possible winners?
I mean, everyone wants to go to Croatia for a few weeks, don't they? I had a holiday there myself a few years ago. It's not my cup of tea. I said weeks ago, if someone can give me a good song with a good singer, I'll vote for it. France. It's amazing. And if you're watching, about 2/3 of the way through, he takes 2 or 3 steps back from the microphone and sings the chorus again, a cappella, no instruments. And it's just as loud and just as strong, and it's stunning. It makes the hairs on my arms stand up. It's beautiful. No computer graphics to interact with. He's just a really good singer with a really good song, and that's what I love about Eurovision. I don't want all the gimmicks. I want a good song.
You're about the music.
Nikki French, I think that's your cue to make people's hair stand up on the back of their necks at home. Can you belt something out for us now to really get people...
As long as you don't ruin it, Martin.
I have 3 hours sleep.
I'm sorry. No, you don't have to. Just a couple...
God, OK, do you want me to do a little bit of my Eurovision?
Yeah.
Go on. Don't play that song again, reminding me of how it used to be. You see, Stephen sang that the other day, didn't he?
But not as well as you. My goodness, you can belt that out. We're sitting up close and personal. You've got some serious gas in there. Thank you very much. I don't know if that's the right phrase, welly, or what's the technical term?
Serious
Foghorn French.
There we go. Foghorn French. That's it from us. Have a lovely day. Ben and Olivia up next.
That was great.
Some gas in the tank. I don't know if that's what I meant.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you on this beautiful sunny day for many of us. It's going to be very warm into the afternoon. However, as temperatures rise, the chance in 1 or 2 spots of a thundery shower by the time the day comes to a close. But for most people, as we begin Saturday, it is sunny out there. Some low cloud and mistiness around eastern parts of England. That will linger around the North Sea coast through the day. Otherwise, inland, blue skies for many, some patchy cloud developing. But with light winds and that strong sunshine, high UV levels as well, temperatures widely reaching the low 20s, and in places the mid-20s are possible once again. Then into the evening, as temperatures rise, well, the chance of a thundery shower or 2 across higher parts of central Scotland, but for the vast majority it stays dry, and that theme continues overnight. A bit more cloud arriving on Saturday night and into the start of Sunday, but it's going to be once again dry with clear spells and temperatures dipping to 12 or 13 Celsius in many places. A bright start then on Sunday, but some patchy cloud around. And then as temperatures get higher through the morning, the chance of some thundery showers developing once again. More widely this time across western Scotland into western England, Wales and Northern Ireland by the afternoon. Where these occur, they're going to be heavy with torrential rain and lightning, but they will be hit and miss. Still some warm sunshine away from these.
Looks like things are heating up.